Hey Michael, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, Michael. How are you?
Good.
Welcome.
What is that? I'm hearing an echo. Do you hear the music? Do you hear any music at all in the back?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I hope. All right. Yep. Hi Michael. Welcome to Election Central. It's 2:30, 2:32 actually East Coast time. I'm sure it's 1:30 to you. Uh, so we're expecting Councilor Verdier and Cyrus Gray. And Cyrus did tell me that there'll be another guest um, who has a background in statistics, and that will be very, very important as we discuss the elections. So we'll have the legal mind, we'll have the election administration mind, and then of course we'll have a statistician who will walk us through the numbers that have come out of the recent elections held in Liberia. There are a lot of concerns about the results as were announced by the National Elections Commission. There are a lot of anomalies in the process. For instance, you have a major presidential team led by Mr. Alexander Benedict Cummings falling far, far short of expectations. Um, Mr. Cummings himself has issued a statement regarding that, terming the elections as election numbers and results as ridiculous. We also have Mr. Edward Appleton Jr. basically coming from nowhere and garnering a lot of votes, way more than Mr. Cummings and way more than Councilor Tiawan Gonglo, two of whom were expected to do very well in the elections. Of course, there's also been concerns raised from the Unity Party end about the results of the elections. There were press conferences, a number of press conferences that were held by them regarding the numbers, even before the final numbers were announced, and after that as well. Um, we have some questions regarding their comments and what they've done so far to follow up on their comments. We also have some concerns about the conduct of the election, stuff that happened. I know there are currently about 114 or 115,000 invalid votes, which, if any one of the candidates got, would have been significant. But more than that, it's 115,000 Liberians who stood in long lines, endured the heat and the rain, left their homes, their kids, their jobs, their farms to vote. And unfortunately, their vote doesn't count towards the selection or did not count towards the selection of the leadership for the country. That's concerning. Why do we have such a huge number of invalid votes? And is there anything being done to address that? So those are a number of things that I would like us to discuss today, and I hope that we can get our guest to turn out. But Michael, if you're ready, if you're not ready, no problem. I can continue talking while you get ready. But if you're ready, you can definitely share any thoughts, pre-show thoughts that you have.
Well, I mean, everything you said, uh, is those are the things that are on the Liberian people mind right now. The level of performance from some of the high-profile candidates in the election that we expected to do very well. I mean, maybe not to win the election or anything, but at least to have a better level of performance. Number one. Number two, and then which is more alarming to me, is the number of invalid votes that we have. That is a very high percentage, and there's no additional statistics that I'm aware of, and maybe they may be out there, but that's telling us. where these invalid votes are coming from and what's causing them. You know, if what part of the country we're seeing higher percentages of invalid votes. If if it's in within a specific area, maybe Montserrat, given that Montserrat has the biggest population. If it's coming from the higher populated area, or are we looking at more outside of the higher populated areas and more away in the rural parts of the country where the education level is low, or access for the NEC, did not have enough access. They're giving the bad weather and bad roads, and they were able to get there to educate those people properly. Is that why we're getting bad or invalid votes from those regions? We don't know. So there's a lot of things that NEC has not answered, and so we have questions. And unfortunately, I think the Liberian people deserve more. They deserve better, than having over 100,000 invalid votes in an election that has 2 million, uh, registered voters. And what happened to all the other 400,000 registered? What is it? What was it? 2.4 million?
2,471,000 exactly.
So how come 400,000 people didn't show up?
Yeah,
That's a
that's
huge percentage that went to register and did not show up. You know,
yep.
to vote. I mean, I understand if we had maybe 2.2 million, 2.3 million and show up, but having over 400,000 people not showing up to vote, that is a massive percentage of people that did not show up and vote, given the small population we have. So, those are things the NEC need to look into. Why those people didn't show up? Did they show up and weren't given a chance to vote because the lines were too long, or did they just not show up, or were they ghost registrations that were on the file? You know,
That's those are definitely significant points that you make. You know what? It's one of the things I did not even consider while preparing for the show is the close to 500,000 people who, according to the NEC results, did not show up to vote. Because as you said, yeah, about 5,000 or even a little over 5,000. Because if you look at the election results, I mean, the registration was 2,471,006 something. Yeah,
mhm.
about registered voters. So it's about 500, a little over 500,000 people, half a million people who, according to the National Elections Commission, did not vote or did not show up to vote. Why? I think that's a really profound question. Why didn't they show up to vote? Or did they show up to vote and they didn't have the opportunity to vote? Were there no polling places in the areas? Were polling places too far away from them that they couldn't come there
Yeah.
to vote? Yeah, it's a were they suppressed? Were their votes suppressed as a consequence of all of those things? Because you have about half a million citizens, let's say, give and take. Um, Not all of the 5 million will have the time to turn out to vote, but as you said, if we had 2 million or 2.1 or 2.2 million people showing up to vote, that would be kind of realistic. But having half a million people
Mhm.
not showing up, especially when those half a million people made it their business and sacrificed to go and to register to vote. So if they
Mhm.
could go through the challenges and difficulties of registering to vote, what prevented them from turning out to vote? That's a key question that I hope, in our conversation today that we answer. And you make up another very important point. Liberian people deserve to know. And unfortunately, we have a culture in Liberia among our leaders where they think that they're not answerable to the people, where they think they are just lords and gospel and masters of the people, and they don't need to answer questions from people, and they don't need to provide
Yeah.
answers to people. It's just about, well, this is how it is, this is how we did it. That's fine. Don't dare ask us questions. We will not even respond to your questions if you ask us. And I think that's a bigger cultural, democratic cultural problem that needs to be addressed. People should be shaking, leaders should be shaking in their boots, in their pants to serve the people, to answer the people's questions. Our people, for us, is the other way around. We don't care. We throw it out there, and that's what it is. And that's
Yeah.
another issue I want us to address later on. which is a way the National Elections Commission has so far released and published election results. I mean, it falls far short of that, of honoring that obligation to adequately
Mhm.
inform the people. And yeah, that's an important point that you raise. People turn out. I should say though that people really turn out in huge numbers to vote on election day.
So
Yeah, and to me, that is a
yeah.
demonstration that the people want to be in charge of their affairs. The people want to decide who their leaders are. Um, and to not or to have doubts about or for the authorities in charge to create some doubts or at least not inform the people completely about the process is disheartening and has the potential really of undermining the democratic process.
So looking at the numbers, we have over 500,000 people, 523,000 people did not
Yep.
register, did not show up. So
Yeah.
getting the percentage of voters that did not 71, we're looking at about 21% of
Yep.
people who registered to vote did
Yep.
not show up. That
So
is very alarming.
yeah, yeah. So 21%, Michael, of
Hmm.
registered voters who did not show up.
Yeah.
Then we also have 115,000, which is probably 5, 6, 7% of people who registered and show up, but their votes were rendered
Hmm.
invalid. Give and take, you're talking about 25 to 27, 28% of the population that wanted
Hmm.
to vote, that made an effort to register to vote, that did not show up. Assuming, of course, that the voter registration numbers were accurate in the first place. So this is a huge number of the population. So let's assume 2 million people are eligible according to NEC. 2,741,000 people are eligible to vote.
Yeah.
Of that number, 114,000 voted, but their votes are ineligible, are
Hmm.
invalid. And then you have 21% of people who didn't even show up to vote at all. I can't even wrap my brain around that number. And we've spoken about this for months prior to the
Yep.
election. Yeah. We raised issues regarding voter education. We raised issues regarding logistics. We raised issues regarding the election commission doing its job, posting final voter rolls, telling people where their precincts and polling places are, printing the materials that are needed, training their staff, etc. And basically, the chicks have come home to roost. If you look at these numbers, it's like, well, what we were guarding against has really come to pass.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I'm trying to
other
get the total number of. So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at. We have. All right. So we had 240. 2 million. I'm just trying to get the total number of people who votes did not count. Right.
Okay,
That's
okay,
including the people who did not show up and
yeah,
the invalid votes.
yeah,
To count the disenfranchised Liberians. Right.
yeah,
So we're saying we got 2,471,617
yep, yeah,
registered, 617
yep,
registered voters,
yep,
out of which uh, only only 1.919. So that 2.4 million minus the 1.9 million,
yeah, yeah,
1,948,485.
yeah, yeah.
We have 523,000 people that did
Five
not show,
twenty-three thousand.
right? 131. So you add that to the 100 what's the invalid votes we got?
114,000 thereabout.
Yeah, 114,114,610. So you add that to 114,610. So you have a total of 637,000 people,
Yeah,
742 who votes did not count, whether they show up or not. So you
yeah,
divide that number by the total number of registered voters,
yeah,
which is 2.4 million. So 2,471,617. You have 25% of Liberians vote did not count.
yeah,
25% of registered voters vote did not count this
yeah,
election. 25.8%.
yeah. Yeah. So 25% of registered voters, people who
Yeah,
turn out to go and vote. And if you look at the numbers that the candidates got, if you look at the numbers that the candidates got, the number of people who register and did not vote, and the number of people who voted but their votes didn't count, is extremely very close to the numbers that the two highest vote getters got.
yeah.
So look at we are he got 800,000 votes.
Mhm.
Well, we have 637,742
Yeah,
thousand people who did not vote. So if you look at we as numbers, give and take is about what 200,000 or thereabouts,
yeah,
little over. If you look at Barker's number, is about 100,000, a little over 100,000 thereabouts of the votes that they've got. That tells us that if you that I mean a huge number of Liberians basically
yeah.
did not have a say in the first
For the
round in
election.
terms of who became the leader.
Would,
And
would that have would that have determined? I mean, can they also give us statistics on where
yep,
the people who register, the turnout in these areas, registration in those areas was the turnout. Can we look at
exactly.
all those are all things the election commission should be studying in the after action review
Yep,
and going back to the drawing board and seeing how they can improve those numbers next election. And these are things that they should have been doing historically. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
they should have been doing these analysis and coming back to the table and saying, hey, this is the percentage of Liberians that did not get a say. What did we do wrong? Go back to those areas and ask those people, what did we do wrong? You
Hmm.
know, now, I guess there's two reasons, in my opinion, that those things are not happening, right?
Hmm.
And this is one of the reasons is that these are things that we've talked about. One, bad and incompetent leadership,
Yep.
or two, lack of the funding and resources to do those things. It could
Hmm.
be out of one of those, or it could be a combination of both. The leadership is bad and incompetent, and they don't have the resources. Or it could be just the leadership don't know what they're doing, or leadership knew what they were doing, but because they didn't have the resources to make it happen, they didn't make it happen.
Or the leadership deliberately did what they did to skew the elections in a
And that's another option.
in a certain direction. That's another thing that's on the
Yeah.
table. So I was trying to add real quickly 14, 15, real quickly add the numbers of the one, two, three, four. The four least candidates we have on the screen. I was trying to add their numbers because I
Mhm.
believe that really just looking at the numbers 40,000, 36,000, that's 100,000, um, 29,000, that's 140,000, plus 26,000, that's 150,000 thereabout.
Mhm.
Just rough calculation. I'm not doing a raw estimate. Just by looking at the numbers on the screen, you can say that the number of people whose vote did not count, registered voters who
Yeah.
presumably did not turn out to vote, and
Yeah.
114,000 people who voted are way more than the votes that Mr. Appleton, Mr. Lucini Kumar, Alexander Cummings, and Tiawan Segonglo got.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this is alarming. These people could have made someone win the election in the first round,
yeah,
you know, or these people could have given the other candidates, a chance to be in the conversation for the second round.
exactly, exactly, exactly. And as you said, it could be just sheer incompetence. Of course, there's another factor that I think we shouldn't forget that we should discuss in detail. That is the fact that NEC did not get the money. the budgetary allocation that they should have gotten at the time that they should have gotten it. So unfortunately, they could not prepare. They couldn't print voter education materials. They couldn't undertake voter education campaigns around the country because they needed the resources. Unfortunately, they didn't have the money in time to do that. Basically, the government violated election law and everything that was required of them
Yeah.
because the election law specifically says that the election commission should receive the whatever money they need to conduct the election in two tranches.
Mm.
Tranche number one should be in January, and I think tranche number one should be somewhere 4 or 6 months after, which would have been in July, which meant that they would have had all of the money to do
Yeah.
everything and to prepare before these elections. Unfortunately, as the chair of the election commission said before the national legislature, they were not getting the money. They didn't, and at press conferences as well, they didn't have the money to begin the process, and therefore they were pretty much strangulated. So that could have affected their ability to do those key and critical things that it should have done, such as voter education, such as training their own staff. I mean, we were seeing in the media and press conferences by the election commission that they were training people in mid-September. They were starting to train staff in mid-September. And
Yep.
then one of the issues we'll go to later is what the observer mission, the European Union observer mission said, which is that there were a lot of ballots where the intent of the voter could have been discerned, where the intent of the voter was known,
Mm.
and representatives of political parties at the polling places protested and argued that those votes were valid, but the election commission staff said no, those votes were not valid. So was it because election commission staff didn't have the required training, which is that all that needed to be established was the intent of the voter, or did they simply just decide that they have a mission, that they have an agenda? Whereas, let's disqualify, let's invalidate as many votes as possible in this part of the country, or that are supposedly cast for this candidate or the other candidate. Or was, as I said before,
Mm.
Judge, and as you said, Michael, just share ignorance, not knowing what to do. These are questions which should be answered by the election commission, but I also think these are questions that the participants in the process, independent candidates, political parties, should be seeking answers to. Unfortunately, I don't think they're doing that. I really don't think so. But we get there at some point in the process. I want us to look at the numbers on the screen, and before we do that, I wanted to welcome Councilor James Verdier for joining us. Welcome, Councilor. Um,
It's good. It's good to be here, gentlemen. It's good to see all of you. Thank you
Definitely, yeah,
for welcoming me, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion regarding these elections and where like directly from here. So thank you.
absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome. We look forward to, as I said, a very robust discussion as well. So let's look at the numbers on the screen. George Weah, incumbent president, 803,956, 43.84%. Joseph Newman Boakai, 796,513, former vice president of the Republic of Liberia for 12 years. Under Ellen Sirleaf, Nobel Prize laureate. Ambassador Boakai got 43,000. No, sorry, 43.43%. Is it 43.43 or 43.44? I'm not sure, but I might have heard. But it's around, it's in that ballpark. Edward Appleton Jr. At first time I heard that he was a candidate when results were being announced by the National Elections Commission. Mr. Appleton got 40,262, 2.20% of it. Lucini F. Kamara of Alcott, 35,984, 1.96%. Alexander Benedict Cummings, ANC Collaborating Political Parties. It's an interesting figure. 29,612. Tiawan Segongo, human rights champion and activist, Liberia People's Party. 26,391, constituting 1.44% of the vote. Now, question, guys, is let's look at these numbers and let's discuss them. But I see a concern, and that concern was expressed by Mr. Cummings and a lot of other people. So let's. What have you heard, or what are your concerns? Or do you have any concerns at all regarding these results?
Michael, you want to go or do you want me to travel?
Yeah, I can go. I can tell you have a lot to say. Yeah, yeah. When looking at these numbers, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that I feel this doesn't look good for the opposition. You know, given that the opposition throughout the last 6 years said Mr. Weah performed poorly, and Mr. Weah, and they were very confident that lots of the people in the country were tired with the Weah-led administration, and to see Weah get a marginal lead in the first round, I think that's very, very alarming for the opposition, especially Joe Boycott, given that he would be the one going to the second round, and the second round to compete against Mr. Weah. Now, I mean, I'm not going to say that, Mr. Weah inflated his numbers or Mr. Weah did not. I don't know. I'm just looking at the numbers and saying this is for what it is. So, and correct me if I'm wrong here. I think historically, second rounds have always gotten less number of turnout for these elections. So if that happens, in my opinion, it's not a good sign for the opposition. You know, and I think the George Weah faithful will show up to vote, and the opposition will take a hit. So I feel like these numbers don't go very well for Honorable Buckeye. Yeah. And then the way the Appleton story, nobody knows where he came from. And getting these number of votes, people are saying that it's Alexander Cummings' votes. But it still doesn't change anything, because let's say Appleton would have gotten 3,000 votes out of the 40,000, on his own, and 30 some more thousand votes were uh, for Cummings. He still doesn't put Cummings anywhere near the competitive levels to compete for second round. He's way off and way underperformed in his last election. So that's just a lot for him to take a look at and see what his future holds when it comes to running for presidency in Liberia. And for Councillor Gonglo, I don't know what the expectations were for him. I think he did okay in Nimba. Everywhere else, I thought he was going to do much better in Montserrat County, but that didn't happen. But he did much better in Nimba, given that Nimba was fully committed to Joe Boyka. But then again, he did not do as good as Josh Weah in Nimba. So that says a lot as well. So a lot to look at, but the most important thing for me is that I feel like this was not good for the opposition, especially Joe Biden. And given the second round, it's alarming, depending on the negotiations they're making right now with all these other candidates. And hopefully that's something we discuss later on as to what strategies they can employ to give themselves advantages in the next round. But I feel like this looks very positive for Josh Weah.
So before Councilor Radio comes in, I just wanted to make a very quick point in terms of the numbers. So if you look at the numbers, actually, Appleton, Lucini Kamara, Alexander Cummings, and Tiawanse Gonglo, if you add the numbers real quickly, plus or minus up four of them got 132,249 votes across the entire country in a
Wow.
population of registered voters of 2 million, of a little close to 2.5 million people. That is an anomaly to me. Like, really. So again, that is one question. The other thing I try to do here is to really add their numbers to Boaca's numbers. So all of the top five opposition candidates. So if I do real quickly, it's 9-3. Is it here? And it's but you can go, counselor. Don't wait for me to do my full laser math. Go ahead, keep speaking while I'm doing my calculation with my pen. Look, at anything stands out to you in these numbers.
Well, a lot of things comes, can be interpreted from these figures and these percentages. Uh, I'm not surprised really. At the performance of Gonglo. Uh, I'm surprised at Lucilian Camaro's performance, and the Appleton's performance. I knew that the Liberian people were not going to vote FPP or their own Congo. I mean, I knew that. A a lot of people knew that. Not to say that speaks to Gonglo's competence or his ability. No, but it's just somebody who was not resonating with the population at this point in time. And the voters' fixation were on Joe Burger and CDC. That was just so. I'm not very surprised. The Appleton effect is, I mean, though Appleton is somebody I know very well, I but I at least expected that he would pull 40,000 votes, And so that is indeed a surprise. Uh, the performance of Lucien Camara also tells a lot, about the infusion and the increasing interest in our body politic by people of the Mandingo origin, who many people think are from Guinea or this and that. We have Liberians who are Mandingos. We have to understand and accept them and stop treating them as strangers. So Lucini Camara too did very well. Um, the election process actually has left a lot of things for people to wonder in terms of voting, the voting pattern, how poll watchers were involved, how election officers, conducted themselves, how were ballot boxes that dispersed, how were they transported, what care was taken with them. A lot of things, have been left for us to wonder whether we're ready prepared to conduct these elections so that people, will be very confident that their votes are protected, the votes are protected, and that the sheets and the representation of those figures are actually the figures that were derived. So there are a lot of things that are coming up. And interestingly, too, is that if you look at the figures, the bulk of the population thing is just concentrated with Joe Barker and CDC, UP and CDC. It just show how I'm not sure whether if you just take all the percentages or the figures of these other 1, 2, 3, 4 candidates and add to any one of them to CDC or UP, where they're going to pass, they're going to get over the 50% plus one threshold. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. You need probably the others. But again, if you, for example, we all expected, and for the past 2 years, we always thought that Alexander Cummings and his party will actually will either be second or third forerunner in the elections. We always expected that. That's what we thought. That's what they thought. But apparently, that's not what the Liberian people were thinking. So if CPP or ANC has some concern about their votes being diverted, I just the argument for me is just short. Let's just take, for example, take all the votes from Tewan Gonglo, take all the votes from Lucini Camaro, all the votes from Abiton, and give them to Alexander Cummings. Where does it place him? Doesn't it place him anywhere?
So pleasant.
Actually, and to be a bit cynical, the person who is actually in their place are the invalid votes. The combination of invalid
Yeah.
votes far outweigh the votes, the accumulated votes of Abiton, Lucini, Cummings, and Gonglo. And this is a very serious problem. I heard you. I heard you talk about poll watchers agreeing that setting ballots for the ballot, but the election officers or the election officers in there were saying no, they disqualify. There has to be a clear understanding of how people communicate their decisions. You know, you can look at a ballot paper and know exactly what this voter was trying to do or trying to say, whether it's an X, whether it's a check, or whether it's just a thumbprint or it's a zero, or it's some kind of mark. This voter is communicating his choice of candidate, and that should be respected. You know, it should be respected. And there has to be another kind of meeting to say, look, for the officers who picks up the ballot paper, if it communicates to you that this voter wanted to vote for this person, but he mistakenly marked something up on the line or something, a lot of people watch us there. You expose that picture and let us have an agreement as to whether this ballot is valid or not. I don't know if that's what they did, but we just cannot continue to disenfranchise people by having that huge number of invalid votes. That basically taking away people vote from them. They're not voting because just for little errors or ink or something. So the election commission has to look at that. You know, you have to look at that to reduce the number of invalid votes. We have to reduce that to a meager percentage. So it needs education as well. The way people are voting, but you can't punish people because of their ignorance. You can't punish them because of that. You know, when it comes to voting, when it comes to crime, that's a different thing. When it comes to voting and communicating your choice or your preference of candidate, you can be punishing people for that. So we need to, the election commission will need to look at that. Now, the way these uh, election results are also announced, the way they are transported, the way they are entered, the way they are disseminated to people is another very important thing. Because the way you do that, you get the impression that something is going on. There's fraud or there's something else is going on. Election Commission has to do something better than that. Even though the law provides 15 days where Election Commission has this latitude to announce election results, that doesn't mean you should wait for 15 days or wait for 14 days. Election results, from the way I think, can be announced. The final results can actually be announced within 1 or 2 days. Why should we try to drag it? You know, because all the different pressure you see now, they want to announce it much sooner. We are experiencing some form of improved media in terms of communication, where results from the elections can be sent, back to the headquarters or back to the station where they are. But these things need to be communicated. You've had a lot of issues with people tampering with ballot boxes, people storming poll station or polling places and taking away, interfering. Why are we not hearing these people being prosecuted right now, being arrested? Who are they doing? Who are doing that? We understand at the county section of SKD, many times people alleged to be CDC were storming those places and were, how can this happen? Why would people be reporting that so many people are being arrested? What? Who doesn't think that these election results have been tampered with right now? Who doesn't think so? What? I know so. There's some level of tampering. So it's a serious thing, and this is the downside of this whole thing. The education is also important. When election results are being announced, basically from areas that are favorable to one candidate, all the other people think, oh, the candidate feeling winning already, winning because he's leading. Until results start pouring in for another area where it's favorable to another candidate, then people think something's wrong. So we need to look at these kind of things and see how we can address it. It's through education as well. But look, the suspicion of fraud is just too high in these elections. They're just too high. And they tell you a lot of things. In terms of opposition, I think there's a whole lot of work to be done. Now, here you are. This is how finances, this is how money can influence elections. You have one party utilizing public resources against their own people. I'm sitting where I'm sitting. I have enough. I've gotten enough information about how banks of money were sent into certain areas, including Lofa and other places, just to be able to convert people to vote the way they wanted. They didn't want to vote. But look, poverty plays a whole big role in how people decide certain things in the dying meeting. The people are dying, the people are impoverished, they're frustrated, they're looking for money, and little thing, 100 years down in the back of race, to be converting people votes. In places where people are not going to vote, I'm hearing, and this is yet to be confirmed, that people are they're actually purchasing people voter cards just to stop them from going to vote. These are very, very serious accusations, and we are overlooking. So what we have here right now is a showdown between CDC that is in power and UP that, according to his people, are complaining that they don't have money. They don't have money, but they want to take power. And Liberian people need to be educated about people assuming power. We don't expect that the man who uses the biggest financial resources in terms of private money is the person who is contributing to be president or to be representative or to be senator. So the man who spends the biggest purse, who has the biggest purse, and spend the largest money is the man you electing. In most cases, those are the people you should not be electing. Those are people you should not be electing. So in this case, it's a red. It just explains how Liberia is so far back in terms of these Western democratic processes that we're practicing, because education is important. The livelihood, the standard of living of the people, very important to determine how they vote. These people are so fascinated and enchanted about luxury things, about money and other things. So unfortunately, I don't think the Unity Party people at some point expected that they will be they will be second in terms of the first round. I think they expected to be first, given all the anti-CDC sentiments, that have been expressed. I personally, I think I was a bit concerned that people in Liberia will still turn out en masse and support the CDC. I'm shocked, and this
If you
results in
look at the, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
So there has to be a way where we get back to the people and say, look, this decision you're making is wrong. This is one time where the majority at this point in time is not right. With it's just to ask people whether their lives have already improved. Besides the people we are cronies around him, the general population, whether anything in their life has improved in the last 6 years. And if that answer is negative, then I don't see why they should be voting the way they voted, or except something else happened with those results. Just like in 2017, results again, there's something that happened in 2017 with those results, especially the result from Grand Bassa County. But I will rest my case there.
Yeah, so real quickly, um, and definitely we have some details where we would discuss some detailed subtopics where we would discuss all of these things in real granular details. But real quickly, just going over the numbers, you asked a question. Even if we gave all of the votes from the other candidates to Cummings, for instance, or even to Congo, how far they would go. So the calculation we did earlier is that the total number of votes that Appleton, Lucini, Kamara, Cummings, and Tiawan Gonglo got is 132,249. So even if you added it to Appleton's 40,000, 132 to 40 is 170 something, close to 180,000. It still puts him nowhere. Same thing with Alexander Cummings if you added the number, and Tiawan Gonglo. If you also added 132,249 to Ambassador Boakai, that puts in at 922,762. Is that 50% of 188 or 189,000 votes? I haven't done that math yet, but I was trying to answer your question that it
Mhm.
might not have as significant an impact. And in terms of combining all of the numbers, it's unrealistic anyway, because people in the place will still get their votes. Another issue Michael and I talk about, which is significant, is that 523,000 people in that ballpark who registered to vote somehow did not vote. So did not show up. 523,000, a little over uh, half a million people who registered to vote did not vote. And of course, then you add the number of 114,000 people who voted, where their votes were declared invalid. So again, there's all of that issue. Real quickly on the Appleton phenomenon, because I'm still concerned about the Appleton phenomenon. Is that Appleton got 4,245 votes in Real. In Nimba, he got 6,119 votes. In Bond County, he got 5,305 votes. In Grand Bassa County, Appleton got 5,267 votes. Cummings and Cummings' vice presidential candidate is from Bassa. And if you all follow all of this show about the Bassa vote and all of that, well, Cummings got 6,000. So that's again, Mr. Appleton performed remarkably better in terms of expectations in these places. So just
What
want to
is
throw
what
that
is
out there.
what
But
is
I
Mr. Abidal? What is Mr. Abidal's vote in Maryland County?
thank you. So let me go to Maryland. Let me go to Maryland. Give me a second here. Let me go to Maryland and look at
Because
Mr. Appleton is
because
from Maryland, correct?
yeah, just as
So
Cummings is.
Appleton, so yes, so Appleton got 1,770 votes in Maryland, and Mr. Cummings got 1,243. So Appleton actually got more votes than Cummings in Maryland.
Yeah.
That's question. Yeah. Now let's go to Sino because I think Appleton does have, I'm told, a connection in Sino. He got 1,111. William Tudor got 310. Lucinian got 301. And Mr. Cummings got 284 votes in the entire county of Sino. Well, that's, yeah. So Appleton really outperformed uh, the other people almost everywhere, except in Montserrat where Cummings got 11,000 over Appleton, and then in Nimba where Gonglo performed better as is to be expected, given his Nimba connection. Um, so here's the breakdown of the votes. Montserrado turnout in terms of voter turnout. Here's the breakdown of voter turnout. So Montserrat is 79.85% of registered voters in Montserrat turnout. Nimba 80.61, Bunk 81.94, Margibi 77.5, Lofa 78.5, Grandbasser 73 point 63 compared to the other counties. And then in Grand G that's 73.68. In Sino 73.72, in River G 78.59, in Maryland 79. So really, if you look in the eastern part of the country, except for River G and Maryland counties, oh, and also Grand Crew, I should say. Um, so River G, Maryland, and Grand Crew have the highest voter turnout. The three of them are in the 78th percentile. Grant, yeah, 78 percentile. River says is 72%, which I don't consider the Southeast, but a lot of people do. So River says got 72% of people turning out to vote, registered voters. If you go to the western counties, Bong has 80, oh, Bombing, sorry, 80.69%. Cape Mount has 75.28, and Bapolu has 78. Um, 0.82% turnout. So in terms of turnout, all of the counties were in the 70% high, mid to high 70 percentile, except for the four counties that were in 73%. So there was really good turnout of registered voters. If you look at the trend, 78 to 80% of registered voters turning out. So turnout was good. There were long lines, there were long queues. It said, but we still have 523,000 people who registered and who did not vote. Does it mean that 523,000 people did not show up at polling places? Or does it mean that it showed up, some of them showed up, were frustrated and left? Or as in the case of Sino, where the election voting was postponed to the following day, that people just couldn't walk the long distances and just said, forget it, I'm not going back there. I'm raising all of these concerns to say, what are some of the things, now that we're going into a runoff, what are some of the things that need to be done to address this whole issue of 500,000 people not showing up to vote and 114,000 votes being rendered invalid, but mainly people who didn't show up to vote? How? What are the things that need to be done to get people to vote? Because 500,000 is not a small number.
But having 2.4 million people
And then,
registered to vote is is an expression of people's desire to participate in the political process. It's also an expression of an increased number of eligible voters over the last several years. And if you want to be critical, if you look, probably if you look at the percentage of the 500 and more thousand people who did not show up for election, and it could have been a combination of all the things you explained. Some people were frustrated, regarding the process. They couldn't last long. Some people were intimidated. They were frightened. There will be violence somewhere, so they were not showing up. Some people were just disenchanted of the process being so complicated, so they just stayed. Or maybe some people got sick and many other reasons. But if you look at the increase in the number of eligible voters or registered voters, that's very interesting and encouraging. Sure. Like you mentioned, Michael, historically, the second round would not really feature and experience the same number of turnout from registered voters. Because people are fatigued. Some people have been trucked, like the people say they will not show up in those areas again where they are registered because the legislative election is done. And so there'll be different reasons. Uh, Hopefully, we should have another huge turnout because right now the ballots are very very contestable. The position of the presidency is very close, between CDC and UP. So this is the time where UP actually want to encourage more people to turn out and vote because it appears to me that there's some work just not done in certain areas. I don't know whether more turnout will mean to favor CDC or favor UP, but the more people you get to take part in these elections, I think the better and clearer the results are easily in a much shorter time. So these are figures we need to look at. Uh, I think the fact that you have almost a million people, the 500 and more thousand for this show could be a combination of a lot of things that could be beyond the control of the election commission. They be within the control of individual, and there are many more things that were in the control of the election commission, like organizing the election on time, making sure election officers got there on time, people standing in line. I think, look, for the kind of long lines that were created, there might have been fatigue. People get hungry, they get tired standing and waiting. And then around those polling stations, once the any element of violence, it scare people away. It's not everybody who wants to go take part in election wants to get hurt, who want to get shot. So those kind of things kind of turn people away. The presence of security officers is important, to provide security, or just to give you the semblance of the idea that this place is secure. In some police station, there was no police officer. You didn't have no security officer. People there were on their own, and there were citizens who were manning police stations on their own, just the community. That again is not sufficient to encourage people to stay in an environment like that. So some people walked away. What percentage of the registered voters have increased? A lot of them are the youthful people, the youth, youthful kids. And sometimes they don't demonstrate so much interest in it because their parents and other people are encouraging them to go and vote anyway. If something happens and disturbs that particular movement, they walk away and don't come back. So there could be a lot of reasons. What we need to do as a government, the people, is to just make sure we continue to hammer down the need for civic engagement. Our citizens need to understand that they have that responsibility to take part in the decision-making process. And voting is that very big, critical, and compulsory way to do that is to vote. Because when you vote, I don't care what happens, do not let anybody discourage you from you turning out to vote. Because when you vote, that is your way of participating in the whole democratic process and saying, my voice will be heard. So voting is very, very important. We need to let them know that. So if they have to walk, and they have demonstrated that. Many people have demonstrated that. They stood in rain, they stood in the sun, they walk distances. But the government too should make it easier for these people who have all of these complications to show up. If somebody has to walk 4 miles just to go and vote, he or she comes by and can't look for food to eat and lie down in his bed. And then you tell him now again after you scare him away from the police station, you tell him I 2 weeks I will come by, walk 4 miles again, Some people just not gonna do it. Yeah. So we need to make election attractive for the people, the election process, the voting centers and all that kind of thing. Just the presence of even a single police officer at a polling station provide some sense of security and people say no, the government is somebody. But you don't have officers all around those places, yeah, you're gonna have this kind of thing. So we need to make it more attractive. We need to do more education, and we need to be encouraging these people to turn out in mass to vote.
Yep, definitely. Michael, you seem to be muted, Mike. You're muted. Michael, you're
Yeah,
muted.
thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that one of our
Yes.
listeners pointed out that from his research, 60% turnout is a good number. And I did some quick research on it while we were talking, and I did find out that, in the US here, our last election had about 66% turnout. And in Liberia's case, I think for the numbers, we had 5 point something million people didn't show up, or 4 point something. And then, so you're looking at around 78% turnout, which will put us in very good company. I would say looking at some research I did here, charts showing countries that came out above 77%. I think there's only one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 countries. That would be Uruguay, Turkey, Peru, Indonesia, Argentina, Sweden, the Philippines, and Belgium and New Zealand and South Korea had over 76% turnout. Those are the countries that in their last election had that level of turnout. So I think we are in good company at that number. So I would like to thank our listener for pointing that out. Uh, but I still need to do some more research on the invalid votes. We have 5.88% invalid votes. So that's still alarming to take into consideration. So just going back to what we've been talking about, yeah, as I said before, the uh, I think the the bad sentiments that were going around about the Weir administration not doing well, and then people coming out and actually voting for them, by hook or crook or by straight deed, I don't know, but they got numbers, and that's very alarming for the Boyka team. And a lot of difficulties and a lot of reports are coming back. I think one something that I heard from a lot of people as well was that the polling stations were very dark. One of my friends said that he had to open the curtain for his polling station, just to be able to see the candidates on the ballot sheet, you know. So I won't be surprised that lots of other people, and this was done in Monrovia, he voted in Monrovia. So if that's happening in Monrovia, imagine what's happening in other parts of the country. Lots of people will be facing difficulties in seeing their candidates and understanding what to do. So yeah, we have a lot to take into consideration right now. I think the political parties, I think the rest from number three down, they should just. It doesn't matter even if invalid votes were given to them; they're still way out of the race. I think the question comes down to the fact that it's just between Mr. Boyka and Mr. Weah, and the Liberian people made a decision. Those are the two candidates they want to take into consideration, and now we need to start looking at who's going to support who for this next round. Does United Party and their coalition or supporters have the resources to garner support and get other parties or get other people on their side? Because as it stands, we know CDC has the resources. They have the whole government resources at their disposal, and there's nothing stopping them from using it legally. I mean, legally there's laws, but nobody's really standing in their way. Nobody's bringing that up. Nobody's challenging the NEC to look into those things. Nobody's asking questions. And so CDCs just continue to do what they do. And they will use those resources, government's revenue, government's money, government pickup trucks. I don't know how true this is, but I read something somewhere that the government had given pickup trucks and 10 motorbikes to local town chiefs all over the country. You know, if that's true, of course it's government money. That's convincing those people. Then who do you think those people will vote for? Those chiefs would tell their families and friends and villagers to vote for it's CDC. So is that fair? No, that's not fair. But the opposition is not making any issue of it. So it's just going to continue.
Mhm. Important point. Important point. So real quickly, just to summarize, 25% of registered voters, 523,000 people did not turn out to vote or turn out and went back or whatever the case may be, but 523,000 registered voters did not participate in the elections or their votes did not count. Um, I think Council Verde, you made a very important point. Presence of security officers at polling places. That's extremely, extremely critical, especially given the pre-election violence and the threats and the rhetoric and everything that was out there. Unfortunately, as I followed the elections, one of the things I saw was that um, the police was responding. There was no prior presence. So it's not a policeman here, oh, I can feel comfortable to go there. It's like jump in the crowd, we start fighting, then we call, and then it takes the policeman an hour or two to get here. That's basically what it was. So they were reacting, not being present and trying to prevent. And that was a problem. Real quickly, also, I was just looking at the numbers. I don't have a calculator before me. I'm using a pen, and I'm not good at math. But we have got 803,956. Poakai got 796,513. When I did basic subtraction, the difference is 7,443 votes. So that's not significant given in a nationwide election. And also given the fact, by the way, that the second round is a simple majority. So whoever gets what is no longer 50 plus one or whatever, whoever gets a high count simple majority becomes the president of the country. So real quickly, I wanted us to just go quickly over counting of ballots because I think that's really important, and I'm sure and Councilor Verga did mention that when we also kind of talk about the way the election commission have been announcing um, um, results. So yeah, uh, looking at people who voted and but their ballots were declared invalid. What does the election law of Liberia say? Election law of Liberia, chapter 4, counting ballots said ballot papers shall be disallowed and included in the number of question ballots in the following circumstances. One, if there is no mark in favor of any candidate on the front of the ballot paper. B, if the voter has voted for more than one candidate for the same position. C, if if there's any writing, signature, or words on the ballot paper other than the mark for the candidate. And D, if the position of the mark for the candidate on the ballot paper is such that it is not clear as for which candidate um, the person wanted to vote. Again, the key here is the intent of the voter. Can the intent of the voter be discerned? So if I started writing a check mark and the check mark is against Michael's name, but the tail of the mark somehow strays into various box, has the intent of the voter, can the intent of the voter be discerned and determined? That is the key in the law. And before I turn it over to you all, let me see. EU observers reported frequent cases when validity of ballots was disputed and noted relatively high numbers of invalidated ballots, including those with clear intention of voters. And this is a statement from the European Union Observer Mission in a preliminary statement. So there were instances, according to the EU observers, where A, the intent of the voter could be established, B, political party candidates said or argued that this vote should be validated or should be valid, but the election commission staff refused. Um, there you go with some of what determined the 114,000 invalid votes. In addition,
Let's
of course, the lack of voter education and everything else. Yes, go ahead.
let's go back to two. Go back to the previous slide, and let's look at it. See point
So,
two there. Number two
okay.
is very important. It says the next
Yeah.
presiding officer shall consult with the party representatives present at the count before disallowing any voter under these provisions. And that's very important because while the poll watchers will agree or should agree that if this mark appears just above or just below this, we agree that it's valid. So the presiding officer is supposed to be consulting the party representatives there and say, look, do you guys consider this is valid? Should we consider this valid before rendering a decision? You should consult it. In cases like that where it's not so clear because the person will trying to because we want to make sure that people's voices are heard. You're not going on the street and say, "Oh, we're going to make sure people, if you don't do the right thing, we're going to make sure you're wrong." People are trying to do it. Now, consider our population. We honor in terms of people who can read and write. We far, far honor the regular threshold for other countries. So illiteracy is also very important. How people see it. And then anxiety too. Then some of these people are even scared. Some of them never voted before. When they voted, they're shaking and trembling. So this provision is what the presiding officer is supposed to look at and say, look, we gotta make sure we do everything to make sure that people's voices are here and their votes will count. Except in those cases where we are definitely not sure what this person was talking about. Like the ballots are not marked at all. But when there's a mark on that ballot, we should try. And then it is not for us to actually be determining who the person voted for, but it has to be clear. The parties, the poll watchers, they can agree. And I'm sure if they did that, that number will have reduced because you read what that EU officer said. Say that in the instances of clearly valid voting, and person might be marking a ballot, okay, they were still invalidated. He said when validity of ballots were disputed and noted relatively high numbers of invalidated ballots, including those with clear intention. And that's the most important thing. If you have clear intention what this person wanted, even though he marked it the wrong way, okay, you can disqualify that, you know. But again,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
I'm thinking that poll watchers will be saying different political parties, if it's not in their favor, will say, no, this conduct, don't invite it. And the kind of another person says, oh no, this conduct. That is why you're supposed to have a general discussion prior to putting the ballot. Take one ballot and say, look, you have something like this, and this thing is marked with zero or extra outside, and there's a board, and the person wants to agree. You have that agreement before you go into the county. But poll watchers will have a tendency to say no if it's not in their favor, and other will say yes if it's in their favor, then it goes around. So when you have that kind of dispute, the presiding officer will just say, you know what, it's invalid. So we ourselves contribute to that. Fair play, is also very important when we do this kind of thing. So I'm sure that happened, but the election commission is supposed to the election commission is supposed to adopt a definite strategic, purposeful approach to making sure that the figures for invalid vote can be substantially erased. Because you can't treat suffering people like that. Their votes have to count. Now, then before I let somebody come in, what are they doing now to make sure they provide opportunity or incentives, for the elderly, people who can walk, people who, what are they doing? There are a lot of conditions that actually drive people away from going to vote. Are they getting the elderly out of the line and calling them in early and say you come and vote? I mean, that's something we have to that's just something we have to provide for the elderly. Come get them off the line, let them vote. Sitting in that chair, let them vote early. If you don't do that, the next time they're not going to come back and sit in the line. So, there are a lot of things that we need to do as a people, as a commission, and I think we overlook some of those things. But invalid votes just seem to be increasing. I think remember there was one election, I don't remember, the invalid vote was 173,000. This one says 114,000. There was one election we had, I think the invalid vote was 173,000. So maybe there's a reduction in the number of invalid votes, but we gotta do much more better than
It's a small improvement, right? I believe that was the last. I believe that was 2017. I'm not sure, but Cyrus is the invalid vote expert. He's just joined us, so he can talk about that. But Cyrus is also in Liberia, so he can update us on some of the things. But Cyrus, right before you join, welcome. Right before you join, we were talking about invalid votes. I believe last time invalid votes were about 5 or 6% in the 2017 election, and now it appears like invalid votes have risen or dropped, but I think it's about 7%. I don't know if it went up or went down, but we're discussing invalid votes. We're discussing the EU observer mission statement that there were clearly ballots where the intent of the voter could be determined, and therefore those votes should have counted, but they were discounted. We're looking at, as Councilor Verda said, maybe the different political parties, because those votes were not in the favor, will say no and no and no and no. And also probably because the next staff were not trained enough, and very importantly, because right from the beginning, they did not establish what constitutes valid and invalid vote from the beginning of the process. That's where we were. Welcome, and you can join.
Yeah, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's been a while now, and I'm happy to be back. You guys, first, thanks for keeping the show rolling. So let me jump straight into the invalid votes. First, to say that the invalid votes for 2017 was around 88,400. So proportionally is not changed because invalid vote now is around 6%. Around then it was around 6% also, except that this time the number is 114,614 roundabout, which is a significant number. And then when you add those who did not turn out to vote or who did not cast a vote, because not turning out to vote may be misleading if you think about places where If I voting didn't happen the same day, there were places in Sino where they said the truck broke down and water cow on the ballot paper and all that. But on the whole, I think the turnout was great. Yeah, the turnout was record. I mean, most of the places had more than 75% turnout. Last year, the aggregate turnout was around 74%. So I follow. I was driving over here to get a quiet place, and I follow some of the discussions. I'm glad that we are dealing with these things, especially as we are about to, we hope, about to go to a runoff. I did a little bit of analysis on the numbers to try to discern a pattern of the voting and why, even though the perception has been that the CDC has performed in a dismal manner in the last close to 6 years, they still were able to win this first round of the elections. I mean, we surprised many people. You know the case with Alexander Cummings, who we thought was going to be one of the three horses in the race. To today, most people are surprised that his numbers are significantly lower than any expectation. So people are thinking around why the Cummings group themselves. I listened to Mr. Cummings' statement. And he said that what he implied that there's some unfair play, and he said that the people who did whatever he think they did, they may have been genius. He said wicked genius. So the notion is that they were cheating, but we can't find out. But I think that's really far from the case. I think the voting just told the Liberian people, probably people have not been listening. I think up to today, the Mr. Cummings' story, his success story, his supposed ability to bring jobs and create accountability has not resonated with the people. I don't think that the voting public, at least the numbers seem to suggest that the voting public do not see that as qualifying criteria for someone wanting to be president. If you look at the records in the legislature, almost all the two key guys who were sanctioned, they easily won seats in the legislature. McGill, Bill Traore. You see, Prince Johnson literally gave Nima County to the DP Barcard, and except for the case of Barney Sherman, which I know probably would not based on him being sanctioned, and may have been based on his own disconnect with his people. If we count that, even during the election period, he went to Robert's post to campaign, and they refused to allow him to use the town hall. So he probably didn't serve his people well, and they made the decisions as they were. But I took some numbers from the uh, the results of October 10th. So I mean, if you guys are okay with that, or if you want, I will run through it and let me make some deduction and get your views.
I'm interested in hearing what they
Go
will
ahead.
give
We're
you.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me put the
Share the
numbers on
numbers,
just a
quick.
few just a few slides, and I wanted for us to look at it strategically. I mean, and I've just said that though, it was common knowledge amongst most people, reasonable people, that in fact uh, we struggle to win this election. The turnout seems to suggest otherwise, and I want us to use the number and go into it and see why. I hope the key stakeholders are listening so that it can inform some of the decisions that they're going to be making in the next 3 to 4 weeks as we go towards eminent runoff. So I started this slide first with the legislature. Something happened. While we are a little confused about the way people voted for the presidency, it seemed in the case of the legislature, like they always say, politics is local. The decisions people make seem to be based on really their judgment of the candidates. So I think out of the 73 sitting representatives, and maybe a case of a few who decided to run to be senator, uh, 51 or 52 of those seats were lost. So we got 52 new representatives coming out of the 73, and there's key players who didn't make the cut. This table is attempting to show or all those who lost. No, it's first. This starts from the Senate. In the Senate of the 15 seat contested, I think only 4 persons retained their seats. Sir Joseph, Prince Johnson, um, Sir Joseph Prince Johnson, Albert Chair, and Beblo Brown in Maryland. Earlier, it was thought that he lost, but he retained his seat. So prominent faces like Nathan Tierje, Coming Wiesel, or where Daniel Nathan from Rapulu passed away before the elections count, but Stephen Zago, the young guy, fairly aggressive profile, of Annie Sherman, Maurice Tuma, they all lost their seats to new sets of senators. Then in a representative case, 51 out of 73 members are out. And some of those who were kicked out included the Speaker of the House. Do you remember during the elections, there were pictures of chambers in Maryland dividing buckets, a load of money? So if the argument is that money could get him elected, well, that argument seemed to have been defeated, at least for his case, because in spite of that, he lost. Then the controversial Akaris Gray, I think one of the things that hung over him was he had become very cocky, and then the last big thing was he took his wedding to Paris. And I think the poor people in the district thought that he was making
voters don't like Paris.
no, I think they thought he was making a mockery, out of. I mean, he drives a 2022 Chevy Tahoe, and he has Mercedes Benz and all, and he bandaged all that in their faces. So I think that I'm surprised that he was kicked out, because he's one of the key players in the CDC, chair for executive. He's all over the news. He has done some things. He led the exercise to remove a member of the Supreme Court and all that, but his people rejected him. Then let's come to these numbers. This is the numbers that I've been trying to talk about, and I will explain the tables there. I got 2 tables. One, these were Boakai, the former VP Boakai winning numbers. So VP Boakai won 7 counties. There's Lofa, Bapulu, Grand Cape Mount Bombing, Moserado, Magibi, and Nimba. The next column showed the numbers that George Weah got out of those counties. And then the next column showed what those George Weah numbers represented in percentage to Boakai's number. So let me illustrate it. So you see the first line in Lofa, George Weah got around 36,000 votes. That was 48% of the votes that Boakai got. So that means he took about half of what Boakai got. In Bapulu, he got 15,000, which amounted to almost 91% of what Boakai got. So they almost shared the county. In Grand Cape Mount, he took 25,000, which amounted to 99% of what Boakai got. So in that case, again, they almost shared the county. In Bombing, it comes down a little to 72% of what Boakai got, but that's a significant amount to get in a contest like that. In Moserado County, he got 99% of what Boakai got. He almost shared the county. In Magibi, he got 89% of what Boakai got. So they almost shared Magibi. Nima County was with a washout. He got only 37% of what Boakai got, because Nima voted overwhelmingly for Boakai. I think they voted about 130-something thousand and 50,000 to Weah. So if you look at the total votes in those counties that VP Boakai won, the difference between Boakai and George Weah is only 143,000. And those are the key counties where the votes should have counted most for the opposition. So George Weah got 520,000. Joe Boakai got 664,000 roundabout. Look at the next table that talks about where Weah won. Then you see why he won the first round. If you look at where Weah won 8 counties: Bon County, Grand Bassa County, River Cess, Grand Gide, River G, Grand Cruz, Sano, and Maryland. I'll just talk about Grand Bassa a little bit before I do that analysis again. Grand Bassa, this was unexpected because The reason why the Liberty Party broke up over the CPP issues was that the notion was that the Liberty Party had the influential Bassa leaders, and they would have taken the Bassa people either to Joseph Boakai or Alexander Cummings. So with the Yombly and Dillon on one side, and then the rest of the Liberty Party, that was the Bromskin Party, we are still one Grand Bassa and River says. So let's come back to that analysis. So in Bong, for example, Joe Boakai has 67,388 something votes. That was about 87% of what Josh Weah got. Josh Weah won Bong. So it was almost like they split the county. If you count the Grand Bassa, Josh Weah won Grand Bassa, but Joe Boakai did a little good there, 78%. But River says, from River says, it starts to drop. Joe Boakai got only 6,500 votes in River says, which represented a little less than half, 42%. Sometimes the argument is made that, oh, the Southeastern County doesn't have a lot of votes. So most of it is between 20,000 to 35,000. But if one person starts to take all that vote, then it begins to matter. So if you look at now, Grand G there, Boakai has only 4,600 votes. George Weah had more than 24,000. So Boakai got only 13% of what Weah got. So in Grand G there, Weah got more than 20,000 votes there. In River G, similarly, Boakai got around 4,000 votes, 23% of what George Weah got. In Grand Cru, he got only 10% of the votes that George Weah got. So George Weah took the lion's share there. In Sino, he got 4,600, representing only 15% of what George Weah got. In Maryland, he got 5,500, representing only 15% of what George Weah got. So if you look at the numbers below, total votes that Joe Boakai got in the Southeastern region were about 131,000, and George Weah got 283,131. A difference of 151,438, which was higher than the difference on the George Weah count on the other side, which was about 131,000. Now, if you look at the last column, most of the votes in those regions were shared between those two candidates. So look up the bond. If you look at the combined vote of George Weah and Joe Boakai was 82%. Most of the votes were already covered. Same for Grand Bassa, 78%, a little bit of leeway. River says 83%, Grand G 88, River G 86, Grand Cru 88, Sano 89%, or Maryland 82%. If we go back to the Boakai chart, you will see also the total that have been covered. The big vote county like Moserado, 92% or 93%, more or less of the votes were already cast just between George Weah and Joe Boakai. And why I'm talking about this column, because it gives you an idea on if the assumption is that those two candidates would galvanize their supporters to vote for them, it is not likely that those voters will vote for somebody else. So the contest will be basically between what vote is left, and the vote that is left is either between invalid vote, which represented the third place in the ranking. You remember, invalid vote was 114,000, way higher than the rest of the other 18 persons. Then the invalid vote, people who did not turn out to vote, and then the combination of all the other 18 votes, which put together is still less than the invalid vote, right? So going to the runoff, the question that one will be asking themselves, what would other candidate be doing to be able to get that simple majority? I mean, Afonso made a point that the simple majority and the current, the difference between the two total vote is around 7,000 and around 7,000. I think we have it here. So 78.8.
7443.
7443. So and 7443 in Weah's favor. What will happen? It seemed to me that that's the word that's going around, that not only that the Unity Party did not canvass in a meaningful way in the Southeast, but they did not even have poll watchers. So there were going around that they are thinking that they maybe we are won those era in such huge number because since they didn't have representation, they just stopped the ballot. Well, for me, in the absence of evidence, I will not subscribe to that. And people, if you participate in an election and you rule out a whole region that the numbers are not significant, well, when the result comes, you have to live with the outcome. I'll give you a simple example. That
Yeah.
one of the candidates was arguing that in fact they had poll watchers at certain polling place, yet they got zero vote. So you send your poll watcher there, you pay him to go and poll watch, and he votes there. And then when it counts in the vote, you got zero. So poll watcher is also at the polling place, and I asked him, I said, "But who you voted for?" He said, "Oh, I voted for my candidate." I said, "But let's see your talent." He showed the talent, and his candidate got zero. I said, "No, you didn't vote for your candidate." He said, "No, I voted for my candidate." He said, "The people cheated." I said, "But that's the very reason you were there as a poll watcher. Did you flag that at least you had that one evidence that you voted otherwise, and they read the stuff to you and brought the people and you sign it?" So in my view, is that the numbers as they are coming in the absence of any empirical evidence, they are what they are. People are probably just being deceptive. So with what it is now, this table that I've shown, these two tables, one could look at it now and determine, so what happens after here? Or will the Unity Party go and canvass for Weah's vote that he has won the first round? Are there sufficient votes left for him to capture? I mean, if you look at Sino or Joshua, I mean, Omen Barker got only 15% of the votes that we got, and we already are 90%. What is left there to canvas from? So those are the kind of analysis that I wanted to put up so that we will look at it.
But you pointed, Cyrus, you
Well,
pointed
that's
out
information.
some of the issues already. You know,
Mhm.
it is clear knowledge that the Unity Party as an institution did not invest a lot into the Southeast because the analysis told them that just one county, Nima County alone, can consume all of the votes, you know, or equal all the votes in the entire Southeast region. I think that was a flawed analysis, even though the projection was right in terms of numbers. But in terms of belongingness, in terms of acceptance, in terms of people feeling that you care about them, even if you don't, you need to show up, you know, and let them know that you want them to vote for you rather than just disparaging them to, you know, to the unknown and saying, okay, you know what, we can live without the Southeast for now. So I think that's something that came to harm the Unity Party, and they should do something to make inroad. Now the second round, there are many reasons why even in the first round people vote the way they do. And they still have another 2 weeks or 3 weeks to think about how they voted, and they can change their minds. You know, I think all of the voluminous concern about fraud in the Southeast, Unity Party not only campaign in the Southeast, I'm understanding that they did not invest in terms of poll watchers as well to represent their
No,
interests in the
not at all.
Southeast. Okay, so definitely, so they end up you see what happened, and if you practice this kind of politics in the electionary process, and people are also concerned that even if you get elected, this practice, you know, will transcend into leadership. You know, where you get this parish, one side of the county to the unknown and say, oh, no, I'm not going to be bothered with these people. I think that was an error on the part of the Unity Party. You know, I know from what I follow in Liberia and other things that the people in the Southeast were clearly disenchanted, not just with brother, but with CDC leadership. But when you put them in a situation where they don't have any choice, but one person show concern for them and keep the campaign, then definitely they will end up going the way they went. And you left a lot of doors open for irregularities to happen by not being
All right.
present. You know, and so what CDC did also, CDC did not just sit and say, oh, you know, you got Prince Johnson and Jeremiah Kuhn, Kevin Lima will not campaign. They went into the favorable Guaca or UP territory and campaign in local. There was a
They
battle
went
in
to
Lofa.
look.
You
They
know,
went
there
to
was a
look for.
battle in Lofa. So Thomas Pala, a lot of people were there. So they had their own followings. So it was attract a huge number of people to encourage them to vote for them. Why?
They got voted. They got 48% of the vote that Buakai got in Lofa, which was
That was
significant.
discouraging. That was discouraging. So you know, and what happened in Grand Bassa
So,
County as well. You know, there were people. Look, we had Daniel Chie, who was very influential in Grand Bassa. We have Nathan Finley, Mason Guy Finley, who was very influential too, due to his father. You know, going up against Youngly and other people. You know, I think that also was a battleground, but United Party was expected to win in Grand Bassa, you know, and now you see what happened. So I think they need to get back to the table. There has to be a message to those different areas from Unity Party. You know, it can be an apologetic message, but to be heavily in those areas. The Southeast, Unity Party is not going to survive if she doesn't get a portion of the Southeast in terms of votes. You need to attract much more appreciable votes from Grand Junior Sano, Grand Crew, those kind of places. You can do that. It's not late to do that, you know. And this does not take away the suspicion or the accusation that there was a huge element of fraud involved in those areas. But since you can't prove it, you don't have the evidence to prove it, then you might as well just leave that and prepare for the future. But I think the strategy came to upon Unity Party, and they'll have to rethink that now going forward. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
good
think,
point. Good point.
I think,
Yeah,
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
I think yeah, I think from my perspective, I think the party is they're too late to recover the southeast. You know, it takes time, it takes money, resources, and and right now we have what 3 4 weeks to the second round, 2 weeks maybe. I don't know what the exact date is, but it has to be next month, and it will be a short turnaround for them. And if they're struggling for money right now,
November
they're not
7th.
going to have the ability to yeah, so November 7th, that's what 2+ weeks from now. They're not going to have the ability
That's 2 weeks.
to yeah, to get that number of votes from the southeast to have any significant impact in the next round, you know. And so
I
that's
mean,
the south.
all they need, Marco, is to make some inroads. And you're saying that it's not going to be likely?
I don't I don't think so, because here's the deal. To me, Cyrus, they number one, you abandon the entire region, right? It takes a lot of resources to place, because it's not just about going and asking people to vote for you there. It's also being able to monitor the votes that are coming in properly, because if you go and talk to people to vote for you and then come election day you don't have poll washers at the polling stations, it's still a waste of time. You know, whatever those guys are trying to do. And I haven't looked at the numbers, but I won't be surprised that the invalid votes are heavily the percentage of invalid votes might be even higher in the southeast region. I won't be surprised if I see that at all. You know, because then you know that the other political parties did not have enough poll watchers there, so ballots that were considered, a little questioning, or they marked them invalid, especially if they weren't for George Weah or the CDC party. And I'm pretty sure CDC have poll watchers in that entire region. So I think personally, I think it might be too late for them to really make any impact in that area and gain any more votes, unless they're partnering with people like Appleton, who got a lot of votes there. It's assuming that those votes were genuinely his votes, and they can get him on their side and hope that he can convince the people that voted for him. I think those are the ways they can go forward right now. But they themselves showing up in that area, it would be very difficult for them to make any progress in those areas. Their strategy was bad. They lost Grand Bassa County. How do you lose Grand Bassa County that George Weah has never identified as his county before, until recently when he said his mom is from Grand Bassa? And CPP and Unity Party have well-known Bastolians, as we would say, on their team, and they all still got defeated by CDC, that is not known for having a presence in Grand Bassa County. And then CDC still put up massive numbers in Nima County, in as much as they lost. But those numbers, 50,000 votes, that's a lot in Nima County, and then in Riverside, in Lofa County. So whatever strategy CDC employed to get those numbers, even as much as they knew they were not going to win those counties, but they still got a massive amount of votes. If Unity Party had done something similar and getting 20-30% of the votes in the southeast in those counties,
Correct.
it will help their numbers massively.
CDC use public money. They use public money to do
True.
the people in this
Yeah,
area. That's
they
all they
use
use.
public money,
Public
and
money.
that is
So
wealthy information that everybody knows, but you don't hear Unity Party complaining about it. I haven't heard them complain about it. I haven't heard anybody make an issue about it unless us talking about it on the show here. So it looks like it's a norm for the government to use government money, or the ruling party to use government money to benefit themselves come election time. So these are all the issues, that things that they're supposed to be paying attention to, strategies that they're supposed to be employing, that they're not doing, and they are hoping instead of actually implementing strategies. And that's the reason why they find themselves in where they're at today. And personally, I feel like it doesn't look good for Unity Party in the second round. It does not. They don't have the resources. CDC has the illegal resources, which is the government money and government assets, and CDC will use it because there hasn't been any historical trend showing that opposition has complained about those things, and NEC is tracking that ruling party is not using government resources. Nothing historically has proven that.
The NEC,
Part of
the NEC,
yeah,
the NEC is saying after election they're going to audit the political parties after election.
After the
so
election.
after election, after you've given the man the benefit of the doubt and he's used those resources, he's won.
So in our discussion points, we will go to what the law says and what NEC is supposedly saying that after the elections. I don't know how that will matter after election, but we'll talk about what the law says. Also, what they're saying that they will wait until the election has been corrupted and after election before they act. That's kind of peculiar.
Okay,
we have,
Council, let me introduce Benedict Fuller.
I was going to do that, but you are better placed.
No,
to do that.
you go ahead. Benedict had worked with us during the election data.
No, I don't know Benedict as much as I don't know Benedict as much as you do.
Yeah,
I don't know Benedict as much as you do. Please go ahead.
I asked Benedict to join us today because he has been he's an economist, finance guy. He's been crunching these numbers to get some meaning out of it. So maybe it will be good for us. Benedict, welcome to listen to his side, what he's finding out.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'm sorry I had to be a little late. I had to run some errands. But myself, I'm crunching these numbers and trying to understand how it's gonna look like in the second round. And from all indication, for me personally, I just think it's a dogfight between Unity Party and CDC. And so I don't think CDC will go with the hands behind the back trying to say, oh, they're gonna give this to Unity Party. But I think I think if you look at the numbers and you try to understand the trend and you look at the historical trend of the numbers, and it seems to be, if I would say this, if you look at the results from the just ended elections, it all understand, I would say CDC has a very, very good numbers, especially from the place that you consider the stronghold of the Unity Party. If you see CDC numbers from the past elections and you see the numbers this time in Nimba, in Lufa, is very astounding. And I think there was a very, very good numbers over there. And if they can build on that, I think they're going to be reelected. I think CDC will be reelected. But Unity Party too, they have something working for them. I think what they have working for them too is the passion that they came out to see that they want to unseat the current government. Secondly, all the opposition party, their main goal was to unseat the current government. But what's going to happen if Unity Party can can have a very good strategy as to how they engage the other political parties to come forth with some sort of endorsement or other thing. I think, and probably you don't know. You can say who's going to win the election right now because everybody had it going their way. Everybody have some momentum on the side. And at the end of the day, it will be left with those who can mobilize the people to the votes. You have to mobilize the people to get to the ballot and vote in the second round. And if you can do that, I think if Unity Party can get that strategy in, if CDC can get that strategy in, you never know who's going to win the election. Right now, I'm very happy because it's the first time that we're seeing two political parties go into the second round. And because the last election, all the other political parties said they were cheated, they didn't want to go either. But this is the first time. I think this is where we can test our own democracy and say, okay, I think it's working. But let's just wait and see, because wherever the case is, just coming in, maybe I will engage in discussion as we go forward. But that's my opinion of this election right now. Yes.
Thank you, Ben. Ben, I wanted to throw this at you.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for joining us.
There is a missing element we haven't talked about here in this analysis. The word around here is that a significant number of members of the Senate and legislature who were contesting had transported thousands of people to the areas to vote for them. Normally, those people who get transported do not have those resources again during the runoff, since it's only a presidential candidate. I don't know the actual number of those who were lifted, but just assuming that people were lifted, how do you think that plays into the second round? Maybe it would be good for us to begin to identify who may have lifted people so we know which side voted in the first round.
You ask me?
That is difficult.
So thank you very much for raising that issue. So I was going to respond. Oh, sorry. Thank you for raising it.
Go ahead.
So looking at your analysis, Cyrus, looking at Benedict's analysis and all of, should I or you go? You can.
I can go. So that is interesting, and I know that's happening, right? My question here is that, so
if you were,
let's
yeah, you can go. You can go.
Let's give a hypothetical situation. It's not even hypothetical, because if it's happening, then this is what's happening. So, for example, say you got a political party called, AAA, right? Triple A party, right? Triple A party representative, Triple A party candidate in Bon County wants to win in Bon County. So he goes to Montserrat and take 2,000 people to go to Bon County to vote for him. But there's also a Triple A party candidate in Montserrat who needs those particular 2,000 people in his district to vote for him. So what happens? Now, so am I going to get mad at my other Triple A party candidate in, Bon County and say, my man, you're taking people from my district to go vote for you, or when I need those people to vote for me here? How is that affecting the results all over the country? But those same people, because I understand now that, okay, those 2,000 people that went to the other county that were lifted to go and vote in another county, they voted there, they got that person to win, but now they're back. Are they still loyal to that party? That when the second round comes, are they going to vote for that candidate, that party again? So if that's the case, then I feel like it doesn't really have an effect on the presidential, because they voted for the representative in another district. But second round, if they do go to the polls, they will still vote for that presidential candidate. That is, if they are.
But Marco, here's a question. Remember, they were trucked to another location. Would they be able to transport themselves there?
Oh, okay. So looking at the voter roll issue, where you are supposed to be voted, into, you're supposed to vote at a particular location or polling place because that's where you're registered. Then that takes into consideration. And if the party has the resources, in which CDC does, they might just still try to pull some of that stuff off. Now, the party, on the other hand, I don't think they will have the resources to, if they did any, trucking or lifting of voters to other locations. I don't think they will have the resources to do a lot of that.
But not only. Let me get some context, because
so let me make
the trucking may have been done by many people from different parties. So assuming somebody who was in ACO lifted somebody in the second round, they are not vested in that election anymore. So they will be in no position to give somebody money to lift them over there. Are you suggesting that the parties that are contesting now should look for these people and leave them there to go and vote? Because it appears to me that in most cases, those votes are not just going to count. The people will not vote. They will not be able to
if you're serious about winning, you got to put up money to get that to happen. I mean, as illegal as it is, but that's just a fact.
That
If you
is
go to our
Michael.
club,
And
if
Michael,
Unity
if I
Party,
may come in real quickly, that is what usually, Michael, that is what usually accounts for. That is one of the factors that usually accounts for low turnout in the second round. Because it
yeah,
represents no incentive to attract people. And those people getting paid to go. The other point I wanted to make, guys, as we talk about who has an advantage and who doesn't have an advantage, and no Michael mentioned that and Benedict mentioned that, is let's also look at the difference, though. The difference in the first round is 7,000 votes, 7,443 votes. Let's assume Unity Party will be unable to put a heavy dent into CDC's numbers in the Southeast. But it's also the element, an allegation that hasn't been proven, that because the Unity Party did not have observers in those places, there's a likelihood that ballots were stolen. The very fact that maybe now they have observers there would take that element away if it was true in the first place. And then we also have to factor in the other element of low turnout. And where do we expect usually low turnout is places that are harder to access. And one of the geographic areas in Liberia that's harder to access is the southeast. But let's say United Party never increases their numbers in the southeast, but simply does a good job at
The
policing
Southeast.
polling places in the southeast to take away the element of whatever. Mind you, let's say everybody that voted for for CDC still votes for CDC. The difference is 7,000 votes. Let's say in Lofa County, Unity Party got 57% of the votes with that guy running in Foya. Let all the senatorial candidate representative candidates running. Let's say that number just increases by 2 or 3%. That covers the 7,000. Assuming everybody gets the same votes again. I'm making this point to say that yes, with the resources that CDC has and all of that, they can still go and do a lot, but the resources that would not change significantly from the resources they had in the first round and the resources that Unity Party had in the first round as well. Then there's another element that I think we should look at, which is all of the other political parties. Where do they go and where do they pledge their allegiance? Political parties and candidates. Let's say, where does Lucini Kamara go? Where does Gonglo go? Mind you, a significant number of the vote from Lofa, not as significant, but in terms of the only other large number of votes from Nima went to Tiawan Gonglo. Let's not, I shouldn't even say, let's say Tiawan is no longer in the race. Where does that vote go? Can that vote be sufficient to cover? We are 7,000, assuming that, given his performance, where will much of that vote go? So there's a lot of factors at play here, and so I wouldn't just give the CDC a slam dunk in the second round. I mean, we can discuss this. I also want us to kind of make a little progress at the race, but I just wanted to throw
yeah.
this out there. And real quickly, we have a listener who made one quick second. Um, well, listener who made a very important point earlier, and that I just wanted to respond to, which is that in developed societies, they hardly get to 60 or 70%. So we got to 75, 78%. That's remarkable. That is absolutely true. But there's another element that I think we should introduce, which is the reason why in developed countries, a lot of people don't vote. The people in America, yes, they want a president, but the president doesn't decide their lives and their livelihoods. In Africa, especially in Liberia, when the president coughs, everybody catches cold. So that's why in least developed societies, in not across the board, not in every case, but that's why it's important in a country like Liberia to have a significant amount of votes. Now let's finally Southeast, Cyrus, you said said, and I agree with you. If you are a political party, you are a candidate, you should have observers at polling places. If you don't have people there and you don't have evidence, tough luck is on you. At the same time, though, I think the election commission it should be servicing everybody. And I think a fundamental problem here is that people cannot even and do not even trust the election commission to run credible elections. So wherever they are not present, to insist on the election commission is a problem, and that's a sad commentary for our country.
Yeah, I think going back to what we were saying, and I'll be quick with this. So I know Councilor Rede, you want to come in. I think.
Cool.
Uh, can you hear me, Alfonso? Yeah. Yeah, I was saying that I think the Unity Party will be best served focusing on the counties that they had a slim margin victory in to make sure they can increase their margins there. Because I'm pretty sure the CDC are very confident in their ability to win the Southeast, and CDC will put a lot of their resources in those counties that they had a little closer margin. Unity Party probably won, but they had a closer margin. And those will be counties like Bakolu County, where it was 44 to 40%. I mean, Bombing County, I'm pretty sure they will try to increase there, which, they had 18,000 votes and Boyka had 25,000. And even Montserrado County, I think they will put some more effort into winning Montserrado and Margibi County. One county they won, but the margin was still close, and I think Boyka can get some ground there. So I think Unity Party will be best served focusing on making sure they can increase their lead in those counties and depend on their collaboration with some of the other parties, in the southeast, the smaller parties, if they can form alliances with them and depend on those parties to help them get votes in those places. And that's that if I was giving an advice to the party, that would be my suggestion and strategy.
Yeah, as far as I think
I think that's a very good idea.
I think Sarah's analysis in terms of where the votes came from and how different political institutions, let's say CDC and UP, performed with group. But in the analysis, we forgot to mention that Montserrado County, where we had to not win this time again, where CDC did not win, that Montserrado County historically has been CDC's strongest one. CDC can no longer claim that Montserrado is their battleground. So everywhere in the country has become a battleground. Even areas that are clearly known to be favorable to a particular party has become a battleground. Nothing is cast in sand and stone this time. So I think the Unity Party needs to actually make an inroad into the southeast, and they will be able to do something with it. Because I think sometimes to me, it represents a protest vote from the southeast, and the fact that there were no presence of Unity Party in those areas. But for Montserrado County now to be on the side of another party not called CDC in the past 15 years, that's serious. So it's not like CDC has done all that they can. They are exercising the benefit and the loss rate of an incubator that have to their exposure, state resources that they have squandered, and so they can do a lot of things to win favors and to win votes and all of that. I don't think this is over. I think the Unity Party, because like when people are saying Frederick is going to, but in the face of the election, when you start pumping them with resources, that they didn't imagine they would get in 2 or 3 days, it tend to make them do other things that they may not naturally, do. And so this makes the second round quite more interesting. It actually depends on how much Unity Party can get around to these voters in the different areas. And importantly too, Unity Party cannot rest in those areas that she wants slackly. She needs to campaign vigorously and be head to toe with the CDC in those areas. I don't think it's hands down for CDC in the second round, but that's what they wanted. I think at some point in time, CDC thought they were losing the elections. What happened in a few days when results were not announced? We don't have the evidence. We can, but there is clearly known suspicion of fraud in most of those places. How do we counter that to make sure that people are present in there to witness those things? So, and then another thing is that in our historical elections, the people, in the second round do not, I mean, intentionally or unintentionally, don't follow what the leaders who are now standing in the election do. In the second round, it's completely open. Many times after the first round, where political leaders call on their candidates to go to vote for this person, they don't do that. They decide where they want to go. So again, it's an open election now in the second round. It's an open thing. You will see the shift of alliances. You will see the shift of loyalty and all of that in the second round because you're left with two candidates and they have to decide between good and evil. So I hope they can decide between what appears to be good to us this time because for this country to go through another 6 years of the level of incompetence and corrupt governance is a terrible thing. So I'm not giving up on the Unity Party, coming out, but I think it's a huge tax that is at the door. And if they're serious about us sitting CDC, then there are a lot of things that have to be done. And another thing, I understand that some people want to vote, elderlies especially, and the polling places that they had to go were places where they had to climb stairs. And they had no way of getting people up those stairs. So people with I can't, old lady, the old person saying, I can't climb the stairs. How do they create an environment or condition for these people to participate? Do they come down and take their votes or something? Those are things that discourage people from voting. Now, in terms of talking, people are supposed to register to vote in the area that they live. That is basically what is expected. But again, as a Liberian, you can register anywhere to vote. So when you register somewhere to vote, it means you are able to get there. If political parties are the ones sponsoring your community in those places, then they should be able to do that. So what Unity Party of CDC going to do is to find out all those people who voted in different areas and are back in another area. They're going to try to transport them to those areas and make sure they can provide per diem or something for them to eat and survive in those areas just to vote. That is critical. That's why the easier thing is to vote in the area that you live. And this whole trucking thing has been illegal, so it also hurt our democracy in some way. But people trucking because they're not able to fully participate in the entire process. They participate in a portion and they can't participate in the rest of the process because of the trucking. And so that's the negative thing away from this whole trucking thing that we need to discourage.
Yeah, let me add some of my observation right sitting here because the first thing I will admit is that the election results surprised me and people like you who will make a rational what I would say urban assessment that, for example, I mean the government employees pay many were sliced from by more than half. There have been a lot of resentment about that. Even during the campaign period, people were peddling the president with criticism that they will respond with their vote. We know that the government's performance, based on our own individual experiences, has been far worse than you would expect. And there is a perception that, in fact, other than we are, the other key candidates probably would do better. But look at the votes. The voters didn't say that. They didn't manifest that in their vote. Even in the urban area that are more affluent, Masurado County, Makibi, Grand Bassa, Bon, Nima made a clear statement because obviously Nima is proving over and over that the vote as a block. But the rest of the counties, especially those urban areas who understand some of the issues of governance, are in the rural area, more or less. They gave the president a good shot. That's one side. We'll piggyback into our earlier presumption that the people will judge this government because of the depravity. To tell you the truth, I don't think the Liberian voters make decisions on that basis. I think we are misreading the numbers. Tell us something else because under that condition, we should not even be contesting to the level he's going. Now, somebody will argue and say maybe the people cheated. I mean, you are a lawyer. I am a rational person. Saying people cheat is an assumption. If we got to uphold our institutions, then we got to make a statement about cheating if we can establish the fact that they cheated, because it's susceptible. It could be or it could not be. The only thing that can justify that is that's why the Elections Commission itself. You remember in the initial stage, the Elections Commission came out and said that people register 500 plus children. The fact that election workers who are registering people to vote who register 500 children suggests to me either they were incompetent or they were flaunting the law. They didn't care. These are the same people who are conducting voting at polling stations. That is why the law requires that there be observers. The stakeholders also have the people there have the right to protest. I will give you an example of a poll watcher who said he voted for a man, but his tally sheet said 0. He didn't protest there, but he's coming out and said the people cheated him. When in fact, he had the right and authority as a poll watcher to have said, guess what? How can we have 0 when I get cast a vote here for this candidate? Which would generate a reason
so
for them
Cyrus,
to
I'll let you to Cyrus, I'll
Go
let
ahead,
you to
Faisal.
go on. Sorry for breaking you. I just want to know whether you have any evidence that this poll watcher did not comment at the time, because, and the reason I ask is, the EU observer mission statement said there were instances where political party representatives protested and commented on invalid votes. Now, whether or not somebody voted, but they were overrated by the next side. So I'm just saying that, did he say, or do you have any evidence to say that he did not protest? I just wanted to bring that
Okay,
point.
so here's this is not a single case. There are many cases where people are coming out and saying that in fact the numbers, even for example, Mr. Cummings said he took his whole crew from his house security all and they voted to one place, and the numbers that came out of there didn't represent half of the people. It's not enough. It's not enough at the polling place to say that, oh, I'm not satisfied. A poll watcher is expected to file a protest, because at the end of the day, the record of count that constitute the tally for that station, all the key stakeholders have to sign it. So if you oppose to the process of something, then you should not sign it. You should register that protest so that engender an investigation of that event. So you can't come out and say, oh, I said something wrong and the people didn't agree. It's not enough. Maybe then they persuaded you. If they brought the ballot and say, oh, let me, we understand this on here, we cancel the vote. And one person said, no, a lot of men were voting this way and that way, and he feels strongly about it, he's supposed to register that protest. So that thing will be put in the provisional ballot to be looked at by other people at a higher level of the Elections Commission. So it's not enough to say that you just protested. That's why you're there to really make a complaint. Because all you guys have to sign on to that tally sheet that comes from there.
So I just want to give you guys.
We don't know.
Hello. Yeah, I just want to comment, because for me, most of these things are happening. I don't want to try to go and litigate these things again, try to solve the problem for the political parties. I think the kind of complex problem as a political party, you should have a strategy as to how to tackle these things then. But for me personally, when I look at the data, especially for the Southeast, and the way Unity Party performed there, it mirrors the past elections. They never did well in the Southeast before. And even if you bring over and say you're going to have pool watcher all in the Southeast and other things, Ellen did extremely well in the Southeast when she ran the election for the first time and the second time. And but it would serve Unity Party were able to get observed that would be good, just to legitimize the results coming from over there. Yeah, you can do that. But I think Unity Party main issue right now, how can you hold Lufa? Because right now the inroads that CDC made in Lufa, I saw that coming. I don't think it was something strange, because the last election when they ran for that senatorial election, they beat Waka and the CDC over there. I saw that coming, and the inroads she made in Nima, even in Nima, last election, how many votes CDC got in Nima? Lofa, 7% of the votes CDC has in Lofa. And the inroads that CDC made in Lofa, if Boaca cannot hold Lofa by 70%, I don't think he's going to win the elections. I don't think he's going to win the elections. Even with Nima, Lofa and Nima, every other place is a place that CDC going to play. The vote is just percentage different. Magiri, CDC performed over numbers last election. Even though Unity Party won it, Magiri, all the other places there. So the thing is, Unity Party or Boaca has to hold Lofa or win Lofa by 70%. I think that's the bet. For them to win this election, if they can't win Lofa by 65, 70%, I don't think they will win. And if they can't hold Nima at least by 60, 70%, I don't think they're going to win the election. So they have to make sure that you can devise a strategy and say, let's go to the southeast. Yeah, you can do that. But the entire election is around Magibi, Basso, Bum, Lofa, Bapolo. Bapolo has always been competitive. Bapolo has been competitive. The last election, it was very competitive. Even though our Unity Party won it, but it was competitive. The only place that, I worry for the Unity Party is Lofa. And if you win Lofa by 55%, and the last election, you had about 78%. CDC has 7% of the vote over there. And if you can't win Lofa by 70%, you're not going to win the election. You're not going to win the election. Maybe you can win Nima by say 80% or so. They can cover up for all the other places there. But if you can't win Lofa by 70%, Lofa and Nima is a key strategy for Unity Party right now. I think it's a key strategy for Unity Party. If they can't win Lofa by 70%, I don't think they're going to win the election.
Yes, which goes back to what I was saying,
yes,
right?
Yes.
The analysis that I made for Unity Party, that they should focus on retaining the places they've won, because CDC will be fighting hard to increase their performance in those places. Lofa, Bapolu, Nimba, Montserrat, Bombing, all these counties that Unity Party won, they shouldn't sit down and assume that it's going to be easy for them there. They need to retain those counties. The Southeast, in my opinion, is what it is. They exercise poor leadership and strategy for the past 6 years, but they didn't have to wait till last year or the year before to start talking to people in the Southeast. They knew how badly they performed last election there. They could have gone back over the last 6 years and tried to beef up their performance there and been working on something. Now it's too short of a time for them to make that effort. They need to rely on their coalition with other people and make some effort there. I'm not saying totally give up, but a majority of their resources need to be in the counties that they've won, and the counties that's close, Grand Bassa as well. They need to make sure they do better in those counties. Win Nimba, Lofa, Bapolu, Montserrat by higher margins, Margibi, Bombing, increase their margins in those counties if they want to do anything in this election, or else CDC will increase their margins in those counties, and those counties might flip in next election.
Wow, this is critical.
I think that's an important point. But here's my point to that. Here's my point to that. To all of the other points, not just to your point, Michael. I believe the CDC has basically reached saturation point in the Southeast. I don't think the CDC can add to any numbers in the Southeast. I think they've reached saturation point. They're at the point of diminishing returns, if any, in the Southeast. That's good news for Unity Party, in my view. Where Unity Party needs to perform, where they didn't do as well, because CDC almost won 90-something% in the Southeast. They can't go above that. What's remaining is places where Unity Party has the potential to do better, because that's places where there's expected to win or to do well. That leaves a room for Unity Party. So I'm not going to shut the door. Let's say Unity Party gets not a single additional vote from the Southeast, but they increase slightly their number in Nimba. They increase their number slightly in Lofa, where now they stand at 57%. If you just go to 60, 65% in Lofa, And it's possible that they do that given the fact that Ambassador Barker is from Lofa and the fact that the other candidates, senatorial, whoever, who are running are no longer running. Representatives are no longer running. There is an opening. Montserrat,
That-
there is an opening in Montserrat. So, but there's no opening in the Southeast. The Southeast is saturated. So the fight is going to be in those places. In Montserrat, which is an urban area, usually has the highest turnout and demonstrated across in the trend in the previous elections, even now. And then in the other places. I will not shut the door on Unity Party's chances. I think what Unity Party needs to do in the Southeast is, if nothing else, police the Southeast to make sure that nothing happens there that undermines the process or that inflates the numbers. Your presence will also send a message to people, which is what they failed to do in this round. And then try to run up your numbers in Lofa, try to run up your numbers in Nima, try to run up your numbers in Montserrat. And as everybody has said, try to do a little better in the western counties. So I think this is a dogfight. I will not give the CDC or the Unity Party any exclusive advantage. I think this is within the reach of the two political parties in the race. Of course, if Councillor Gonglo, who had a broom and say he wanted to sweep corruption and how the CDC is bad and corrupt, if we are serious about that, then we should try to work with people who will at least agree to us to sweep corruption. If Mr. Cummings, who wanted to fix things, that now the onus is on him to see what did he want to fix in the first place. If what he wanted to fix is what Mr. Weir was doing, then he has an option here. If Mr. Lucini Kamara and everybody else. So I think it's not lost. And I think everybody has a shot. And I think Unity Party has a good shot still. But all of these people who were talking about sweeping corruption and fixing the country, now they have a responsibility to demonstrate to the Liberian people that it was not just about them becoming president, but it was about the good of the country. And we all have to challenge them to demonstrate that.
I mean, for me, I think both parties has to have a strategy going into the second round. And I think the party should be thinking about seeking the endorsement of people that Lieutenant Kamara, Cummings, Gonglo, and CDC. For me, CDC, what CDC should be doing is going to the guys and say, "Look, my man, don't endorse anybody. Let it be just between us." And I think both parties can adapt their own strategy as to how to go to the second round. But I think, in my honest opinion, the Southeast, you gave her the Southeast during the election as a political party. You just gave her the Southeast and just think that, for me, you just, as a political party, you should have focused and said, look, I'm going to go to the Southeast. I don't know if I'm going to get much vote from there, but you gave her the entire Southeast, no campaign, no nothing there. I don't think, and the people around it too. I don't think the number was thick in the Southeast. I don't think I don't think that was, I think that number was very legit, in my opinion. Because if you look at the data from last election and look at it now, Baka has almost the same number from last election. Almost the same number. Sometimes he went below some of the number. The only thing that increased over there is the invalid vote or other political party they were not voted for, but most of them vote for CDC. So if you look at the data and other thing and try to understand it from that standpoint, I think you have a clear picture as to how they just gave her the Southeast. They now want to play in the Southeast and it hurting them. But from me, Boakai, if he can seek the endorsement of Lieutenant Kamara or Ako to increase the number in Lofa, it's done. If you can't get Gonglo to endorse you and for Nimba and other things. It's done for Unity Party. And if you can get Cummins to come and endorse you, I mean Cummins post on voting Maserati, it's done. So these are three key endorsements that the Unity Party has to see how best they can get. But if they can get it, they're done. And for CDC, for me, their strategy would be to go after the guys and not to endorse anybody. Just just be neutral. So, but if you look at the number from last election and you look at the numbers now, CDC performance was far better than most of the results for every county, even though she never won some of the county. But her numbers were far better. So I just looking at these numbers and say, oh, well, they're going to be a dogfight. It depends what kind of strategy you adopt to go to the second round.
Well, that's I think those are good points.
Guys, so before you come in, I have a guest. Oh, sorry. I have somebody who called on the phone and wanted to make a comment. I don't know. I put it on speaker on my phone. I don't know if y'all will hear him, but let's try that. And then when he leaves, we can continue our conversation. It's Moses Sandy. Moses Sandy is president emeritus of the Association of Liberian Journalists in the Americas, and he's been on this show before. And he's driving, so he can't join. So he called and want to make a comment. Moses, do you hear me?
Yes, I do. And Alfonso, let me say thank you to you.
Do you guys hear Moses?
And the rest of the panelists.
Yeah.
Are you guys hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to you guys for the discussion you're having. This is a very meaningful discussion. I would like to come to this discussion coming from the standpoint of being an optimist. I don't want to be pessimistic, as I'm hearing some of you guys say, well, if Baga doesn't reach out to Congo, he doesn't reach out to the others, or presently, the likelihood of the CDC becoming victorious is very high. When you discuss the data, when you look at the data, you also need to look at some of the contributing factors to what we have today in terms of data. If you look at the percentages, the number of votes accrued, you and I will agree that approximately 57% of Nigerians rejected the CDC. Rejected Mr. Weah because this administration has failed in all sectors. Look at the difference between the two. Mr. Weah accumulated 43.84. 0.84 is less than 1% of the total votes cast. Mr. Obwaka accumulated 43.44. So it means that Mr. Weah lead is less than 1%. And now let's look at the two individuals and the two parties. Mr. Weah, his administration, even reported by the European Union, took advantage of the people of Liberia, used government resources, money, logistics, employees to campaign, to support his campaign. The Unity Party came to this campaign financially charged. So that's a victory for the Unity Party. To see a party that is financially struggling to put up such a fight, the ruling administration, the guy who has the campaign is paid by the taxpayers of Liberia. Eugene Nande. That's a violation of the code of conduct. The Deputy Minister of Finance is campaigning. Public employees were literally coerced to campaign for the ruling party, to participate, to support the activities of the ruling party. That's a defeat. That's a defeat for Mr. Weah. Liberians have resolved in the numbers that it is time for Mr. Weah to leave. And if I were Mr. Weah, by now I will panic. But it's an uphill tax. How do you go
I rather don't know your name, but we have to be realistic if we're looking at these numbers and try to analyze it in the best way possible instead of us just trying to say,
Ben,
yes.
Ben, he will be he will be leaving and we'll have the opportunity. So let's just let him land, please.
So what I'm saying is that Alfonso, when Mr. Weah came to the presidency in 2017 in the runoff, he won more than 60%. He won 14 counties. But then Mr. Weah has been able to win only what? 8 counties. 8 counties. 57% of Liberians approximately rejecting him. Is he not scary? Is he not a victory for the opposition? Don't forget, when you leave, when you are incumbent, you have a lot of advantages. You have a lot of advantages. And you didn't have corrupt, even the Elections Commission. Look at all of these violations that I made mention of. Pre-campaign activities. You go to Monrovia today, the entire city is done. I mean, it's done with billboards. They started all of these activities prior to the former opening of campaign activities in the country. The National Elections Commission looked the other way. Don't you see that? A good number of the commissioners have inseparable relationship with the ruling administration. I think we should commend the Unity Party for the fact that it has been able to put up. This means that the ruling party, the future of the ruling party, is in limbo.
All right.
So we should be upset. That's how I would like to end it.
All right, thank you.
It's not that somebody going to walk in a park. It's just not a walk in the park. This is going to be competitive. Liberians don't want George Weah.
Thank you, Moses. If you want to stay on and listen, because Benedict was trying to make a point. So if you want to stay on and listen, you can let Benedict get.
For me, I like to look at numbers and be realistic as to what is happening. And instead of us, we all these things exist, and we understand that. But it left with the opposition to be able to tackle the complex problem and see how best they can solve it. You're not going to do it for them. I'm not going to do it for them. They have to be able to go in and say, okay, this is how I would engage the kind of problem and solve it or so. But if you look at the numbers, and especially when it comes to last elections and these elections, I mean, last election, the total results from the CDC has 36% of the vote. And Unity Party has about 27% of the votes. And all other parties, they have about 36% of the vote. Invalid vote was about 5%. And the invalid vote still the same. But what happened these elections? Other political parties didn't get much votes as the last election. And if you look at the other political parties, how much votes they had, last election they had almost 600,000 votes, all other political parties. These elections, they only have about 250,000 votes. All the other political parties. Last election, they had about 600,000 votes. And but this election, they only have about 250,000 votes. And that's the numbers that people are supposed to start thinking about. How can I get some of those numbers to be part of my, my own, to increase my numbers? And for me personally, CDC has designed a strategy to make sure that most of these guys that participate in the election don't endorse anybody. Unity Party has to go about seeking these guys an endorsement. Because if you want to increase the number in Lofa, you got to get the endorsement of Lieutenant Kamara or Akko. You have to. If you can't get an endorsement, your number will still down there. You have to get an endorsement of Tawan Gonglo for Nima. If you want to increase that number in Nima, You have to. CDC make inroads in most of this county. Like Lofa, I mean, the number from Lofa is extremely, and if you look at the number, last election, CDC only has 7%. But this this percentage from Lofa is about Lofa County, CDC have almost about 27%.
CDC got
27%.
35%, I believe it is.
Yeah, they get 35,000 votes, but the percentage I'm looking at for the
5,000 votes, 27% in local.
27%. And you know, so in the last election, it was just 7%. So they made a lot of inroads in Lofa. And I think one of the things that happening for her, she has all the guys in the Tomafala and everybody going to Lofa and trying. Yeah, they make a lot of inroads in Lofa. I think they carry out a lot of activities in Lofa too, because I heard that almost about 40 somewhat villages in Lofa has a solar panel.
So,
And, you know,
yeah.
So we got to look at the thing realistically, look at the numbers, and look at what they did and other things, and just be able to analyze it in the best way possible. I just think Boakai needs to win Lufa by 65% up. If he doesn't win it for me, I don't think he's going to be the next president.
So you make an important point, and I don't think anybody disagrees that Boakai needs to run up his numbers and move find other places. However, I think the point Moses was making, which I will also make, is that one, that is not impossible, and two, I really do not believe that the Unity Party and Boakai need the endorsement of other people to make up the numbers that they need. It will be great, and I hope to pursue it and pursue it vigorously. But I also do know, looking at trends in Liberian elections, that people do not just go to the polls because somebody tell them go and vote for this person. So in terms of appearance and psychologically, it has an effect, but you still have to do a lot of work on the ground. I also want to think that there's another element, and that element is that people who voted against George Weah did so because they did not want George Weah. So they voted for the candidates that they wanted. Now that those candidates are not in the race, what would they do? Would they go and sit home, which I think is likely, or would they vote for the other opposition candidate? I believe that's also likely. Can Mr. Weah make some wins in that group? Yes, I think it will be limited. But I keep taking us back to the difference between Mr. Weah and Mr. Boakai. That difference nationally, it's 7,000 votes. Even though Mr. Weah won overwhelmingly in his strongest hold of Southeast, he still has only a 7,000 vote difference. Even though Mr. Boakai performed poorly in his stronghold, Lofa, he still is down by only 7,000 votes. Who has a chance of making up? Mr. Weah run up the numbers to 90% participation in the Southeast? We're already at 80% plus of participation voter turnout in the Southeast. Are we likely to get up to 85, 90%? It's not unlikely, but it's difficult. Mr. Boakai, however, performed 57% in Lofa. Can he increase that number? The fact that the people who took votes from him in Lofa, Lucini, Kamara, and Appleton got 5,000 votes in Lofa. Lucini Kamara got 5,000 votes in Lofa. The fact that those two people will no longer be in the race, who is it likely to benefit? That's a question. That is a statistical as well as a strategy question that we should be asking.
That's the reason why
Lofa turned out at 78, 79%. Can Lofa go a little up to 80, 81, 82%? I mean, Nimba, rather. If Nimba does that, who does it benefit? The fact that Councillor Gonglo is no longer in the race, the people who voted for Councillor Gonglo, are they going to vote for another son of Nimba, or are they going to give their vote to Mr. Weah, or are they going to get their vote to somebody? These are places and things we need to look at. That's why, as I've said earlier, let's not, I wouldn't give an exclusive advantage to anybody at this point. And I think Michael, finally, my final point, Michael makes a very important point. Does it benefit Unity Party to put a lot of resources in the Southeast? Can they turn the numbers in the Southeast around in 2 weeks? I doubt it. Should they try to put their resources into running up the numbers in Nimba and Lofa and Bapolu and other places and Basa where they have and Bong where they have a likelihood of pushing up their numbers? So if CDC even gets the entire Southeast as they did, those other numbers can counter them.
But how do you
The
do
only
that?
thing I will advise another party to do if I were advising them is protect the votes in the Southeast. Put everybody at the polling place so nothing nefarious happens and run all your numbers in those other places. The way you do that, of course, is what you've been saying, Dan. What you've been advising CDC to do is to go and campaign and get people and put resources into it. That's how people win votes. And Councilor Verder hasn't come in a while, so if you want to. But let's give you a time. Michael was kind of very pensive. He wanted to say something too, but let's give the councilor a chance.
No, let Michael go. Really, what we're doing now,
Mr.
the
Sandy, are you
analysis,
still on?
but then we very speculative, and
Yeah.
I will not just trend with the speculations because we all don't know what's going to happen. We just don't know what's going to happen. We can discuss what we think should happen. The Liberian people in elections, they are so undeterminable. You don't really know how they're going to vote or when they're going to vote. And historically, also, like I pointed out, in the second round, the voters don't really follow who their defeated political leaders or other candidates who are not participating in the second round, and then go forward to endorse people. They don't follow. They make their own determination. But the point I will still want to make is that everything is still up to grabs for each party. But Sandy made some good points about the fact that you have 20 political parties participating in election, and CDC was able to accumulate 43% and work out 43% as well. It means the rest of the percentage, that almost 60% or say 57%, actually rejected CDC. That's what they did. Actually, in the first round, that more than 50% of the voters said no, we will not come with CDC. So that is something to build on. That is something to build on. And the CDC is going to be using the entire criminal enterprise, to go and get out of the voters. That's what they're going to be doing. So now for us, all of the political parties who are determined to get the weird cronies out of power, they should be, whether it's favorable or not, they should be rallying around UP, encouraging the party things, the other things to actually vote in favor of broadcast, because CDC is the common denominator, is the common enemy. I think that's what it should be happening, but it still remains an open field for everybody. I think it's a scary thing to think that Liberians will go out again and vote for CDC in mass to give it another 6 years. It's a scary thing. I don't want to. I just can't fathom it. But these are the realities, gentlemen. The things Sunny made that people rejected CDC in the first round is not enough. They need to come and reject CDC again in the runoff. That's what they need to do. The 60% or 50% percentage, they need to come out again and vote against CDC and make sure that we can just put them out. That's what it should be. But again, I can't speculate how they're going to be. I will hope that they will do what they're supposed to do. Like grand people do what they're supposed to do. It's not surprising that people still run behind CDC in the midst of poverty and destitution. Other thing, you see what the people still doing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
strange.
You want to come in?
So
Just,
I will I will
all
I
right,
will
just
rest there.
just give it. Let a second. Let Michael come in.
Um,
Go ahead, Michael. Michael, you're muted. You're muted. You are
Sorry.
muted, Mike.
Yeah. Can you hear me
Yep.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want
Yes.
to address what Mr. Sandy said and what you also said, Alfonso, and also just buttressing what Benedict said, right? We've said this thing about the sentiment of Liberian people being upset with CDC and all that stuff for a long time. But CDC still got majority of the votes this going election. So that tells you that this sentiment of Liberian people, it's a fairy tale. Yeah, the Unity Party got a lot of votes, but the CDC still got more votes than Unity Party. Another thing to take into consideration, Alfonso, you said something about those who didn't vote for CDC rejected CDC. So that means that they're not possibly going to take CDC. When we look at last election, right? I'll give you the numbers for last election, 2017. In 2017, the first round, Josh Weah got, let's see here, Josh Weah got 596,000 votes, 38%, right? Boyka got 446,000 votes in the first round, right? And then you have Bronsky with 149, Prince Johnson with 127, Cummings with 120, 112, Bandai Euro 24, right? So when we went to the second round, Joshua got Joshua left from 596,000 in the first round to 732,000 in the second round, right? Boyka left from 446,000 in the first round to 457,000 in the second round, right? So that analysis that people rejected George Weah, you know, so they would not take him historically from last election. It's shown that the people who rejected George Weah in the first round due to his manipulation or cooperation and partnerships, they accepted him in the second round, whatever the case may be. So Joshua has proven that he has been able to increase his tallies in the second round. He's the only one who has proven it from just last election. That's the only evidence we have to go by. Right now, we cannot go by what we believe, the feelings and the thoughts or sentiments that Liberian people are. We can only go by what we've seen historically, data-wise. And what the data has shown, Joshua has the ability to increase his votes massively. And that the people who voted, even last election, right? What were we saying? It was the educated versus uneducated. So those who were not voting for Weah, they didn't want an uneducated and unqualified person to take office. But second round, that was not the case. Those same people who rejected George Weah in the first round massively voted for him in the second round. So historically, Josh Weah has the advantage from what has happened before. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen again, but historically, Josh Weah has done it. So I think Unity Party has to forget what they feel, the sentiments of the Liberian people are, and hope, and hoping that the Liberian people really want them and really do the groundwork, or else the same thing is going to happen again to them again. And it's not going to be all we thought. It's going to be you guys did not do your job. You guys were
George Weah was on the ballot in 2006 and you were on the ballot in 2011. And he didn't, those two didn't translate. The second round didn't translate in favor.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
one one thing you guys gotta
So
understand.
guys, I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this, Benedict. I'm sorry, you are the one
Yeah.
who is always speaking, and this guy wants to come in. Moses Sandy is still on the phone. I told him to wait until you guys landed. So let's give him a few more minutes, please.
okay.
Yeah, look, guys, thank you, Alfonso. But look, what I want to say is that the runoff election is going to be very, very competitive. Again, I want my colleagues to look at the condition under which Liberians went to the first round of the election, the just ended election. Let's look at the precipitating factors. You saw Mr. Weah. You saw the CDC literally throwing money, material resources at people. The people spent $50 million of taxpayers' money. Do you remember the number of motorbikes that they threw in the street? Do you remember the thousands of dollars that they wasted on people? They're trying to poor people in the street. How then do you look at all of these factors and you still don't want to believe that the opposition put up a state fight? It's like you have found So you and I, we're in a fight. I have men supporting me from all angles, and you have nobody with you. And you and I come to a draw. We need to factor in what is happening in the country. You have somebody who is just literally putting the nation's effort, throwing money here and there, telling people here and there. And then Liberians say, Mr. Weir, we don't want you. You know what 57% represents? This man came to the presidency with massive support. Let's do some reflection. He won 14 out of 15 countries in Liberia. In 6 years, Liberians resolved, the 20% of Liberians resolved that, look, we don't want you. You're not a good leader. You are a failure. You represent what they call the tyranny of democracy. We don't want you. This is what the data shows. I want my colleagues to look at it like this. I can simply tell you that this second round of the runoff election is going to be a competitive process. Mr. Weir cannot go to bed sleeping thinking that, oh, well, you know, he has won the election already. I agree that Unity Party has to reach out. It needs to reach out. I mean, the leadership needs to reach out to ACO. Then they need comments and other opposition members. And this is where I think all Liberians need to come together to agree that, hey, this is about nationalism. It's about the good of Liberia. What Liberia is currently faced with is evil versus good. And the CDC represents evil. Don't you see the breakdown in the rule of law in Liberia? You see people literally looting the nation's stuff.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, I can't remember his name again.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy.
Yeah.
His name is
Mr. Sandy. Mr. Sandy. I mean, I understand your passion and I understand where you're coming from too. You know, but sometimes you got to be realistic and look at what's happening and look at the number. I mean, I would say that it's a dogfight. And, you know, CDC will now put a hand behind our back and say, oh, we're going to give out this to Unity Party. Unity Party wanted badly. She has to work for it. And it's a dogfight. And when you see the data, either party have a better chance of getting to the finish line. Either one of these two parties can get to the finish line. But if they have the right strategy in place and go to the second round and see how best they can put it off. Either party has it right now. And I would say this, it's Liberians all over. It's Liberians supporting the Unity Party. It's Liberians supporting the CDC as well. So we shouldn't discount those people that are supporting CDC or Unity Party. We shouldn't discount them. They are all Liberians. Maybe for some reason they decide to support CDC or they decide to support Unity Party. But I would tell you, my own thing is all the other political parties, the votes they accumulate and the invalid vote is total up to 350,000. It's different from the last election. Last election, all the other political parties accumulated 700,000 votes, including the invalid votes. And it's different from the last election. So right now you're looking for that small portion of votes to add on to you to be able to get to the finish line. And that's why I think it's critical for both parties. The strategy for CDC will say, look, I go into ACO, I go into Besanga, I go into, don't endorse anybody. Just stay on it, let us fight it together. And for Unity Party, you got to be quoting these people to be able to come up openly and endorse you, because it will give you a cushion. Even though you say people vote by the, people don't vote by the political leader, but when that leader says something, at least it will give them a cushion. They will have a reason to say, I'm going to vote for the person. So that's that. For me, look at the numbers. The other voter is just about 300,000 votes. And I would discount that number and say it's a second round. Maybe, the second round we're going to lose maybe about 10 to 15% of the votes, because all the other issues throwing votes, throwing people this way and that way. Some people will be reluctant because other people is not on the ballot. So I'm just saying, I'm looking at these numbers. I'm trying to understand where CDC has a hope of winning the election and where Unity Party has a hope of winning the election. And for Unity Party, Lofa, that's where it lies. And that's where it lies because you have the person. Yes.
We're coming to the end. So what I want you to do is to make your point and summarize. Make the point where you believe CDC has the numbers. Make your point. Just conclude so that because we have 9 minutes to the end of the show.
Okay.
So just
for me, I would say for Unity, yeah, 1 minute, less than 1 minute. For me, I would say for Unity Party is owing 70% of the vote in Lufa, owing maybe 70% of the vote in Nima, having all the other political parties to endorse you, like Besanga Finley, ARCO, Gonglo to endorse you. That way you will get to the finish line. For CDC, the inroads you make in Lufa, you have to keep up that inroads in Lufa, in Nima, and hopefully have all the other political parties not to endorse anybody. That's the only way they can get to the finish line as well. So all of the end, for me, both parties have a good chance of winning the thing in the second round. So I was just end there.
Yeah, for me,
right. Councilor, you were coming in before we went to Moses. Sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Councilor, you usually get you a chance to go, so you can decide.
Okay. I'm a mayor of precedent, so I've been given back a chance to go. I'll let him go.
Oh, okay, thank you. But yeah, I was saying that I understand the passion of Mr. Sandy, and I'm not discounting that the Unity Party hasn't done well. Unity Party has done well, but this is Liberia. Liberia is known for the done well trophy thing, and I don't think Unity Party, if really party really wants to win this, like Mr. Foley said, they need a ticket, they need to go. And so all these analysis that we're providing is to tell Unity Party that, look, do not depend on what you believe the sentiment of Liberian people, are. You need to put in place an actual strategy, and you need to work. Do not sit back and think that, oh, Liberian, we've done a good job, and this will come to us. No, it's not going to come to you. You have to go in, put in place a strategy to win CDC, because CDC is not resting. We saw what happened last election, second round. CDC put in efforts, disrupted the ANC, got some ANC members to endorse them, got some votes from ANC. In as much as communists did not endorse them, they are willing to disrupt your party, get people in your party to leave your party, to come, even though maybe the standard bearer themselves may not want to support them, but they will get people within that party that have influence to come and support them and disrupt that party. CDC will do what it takes to win. So you need to do what it takes. You need to fight. And those strategies, come down to identifying where you have strongholds, making sure you don't lose those advantages there, because CDC will come to fight you there, increase your numbers there. And in other places that you have some, success, but just some things happen that maybe CDC won, like Grand Bass or River says, those are counties that you can fight. Those are counties you can go in and you can gain more votes. Definitely increase your margins in Lofa, Nima, and Grand Kimau is a closed county. Margibi is closed. Montserrat is closed. You need to, in all those places, increase your margins. And until that happens, if that doesn't happen, CDC will increase their numbers there, and CDC will win. So this is not the time to sit by, relax, and
get out.
Expect the people will to help you win. Yeah, you have to fight for it, and you have to go in and have a strategy. So that's just my thought on the process. I'm not discounting what Unity Party has done or what CDC has done. Congratulations to both of them for getting to this part. My biggest thing is that whoever wins this election is what the Liberian people actually voted for, fairly, whether good or bad.
Well, gentlemen, I think all of you made some very solid points in terms of where we go from here and what the projection may be based on what we anticipate that people will do. Look, I'm not here to advise the CDC on what to do. I am definitely a proponent of somebody who's trying to kick CDC out of office. I'm not here to advise for it. You know, I think it's about time we get rid of the gangsters, who have bastardized our economy, and have beaten our country so much. I'm not interested in what they do. Whether we are still or not on this number, that's his business. We need to keep we are in our office. And Unity Party right now is at that threshold, at that point, at the cross of the road where they can do that, and it should not be strange to Unity Party and being to run up before. What I was just in the same run up with CDC, the performance in the last election was far less than what they've done so far. And it never hurts to build alliances, Benedict, when you keep pointing out your endorsement. It never hurts. Whether you're going to get 2% or 1%, it just doesn't hurt. You need to get enough influential people from the opposition on your side. That projection, I think, is good. Even if the people don't vote, but it's good that people like Cummings, if Cummings believe that he actually was fighting against the Weir administration or incompetent, I don't see why he wouldn't want to support Wagner and want to be silent. I think this is about time where he does something that will either increase his chances for future election or he might break his chances if he doesn't. And all the other candidates, Lucini Camara, Ableton, I think this is time for United Party to go around these people, and make sure that they can be seen on their side. I totally agree.
Ableton, the magic man.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I will also think, that the Unity Party needs to step. I think it was to slap in the face of the resulting local council. We expected that local council will be overwhelmingly Unity Party. And for CDC to have battle in there and a coup or accumulated the kind of votes they got, I think it was a slap in the face. So they need to go back there and do much more in Bapolu, Kidman, and all of that. I don't think it's going to hurt the Unity Party if they make some attempt to get into the Southeast. I don't think it's going to hurt them. It will only help them. Whether it's significant or not, it will only help them. But again, Alfonso, you mentioned that even if they don't campaign heavily, but they need to keep their eyes on the ballots over there. And just by being present in the Southeast at those different polling stations, you may stop some things from happening that will work in your favor. So they have to sit there and design the strategy and make sure that people are actually in the Southeast to pursue in the Unity Party's interest. And I really believe that in the second round, this runoff election will come in November 7th. I believe that Liberian people collectively are going to make a statement and say, CDC, it's time for you to get out. You beat our country too much. We can't take it anymore. And we'll be seeking you out of office so that we can prosecute you in the future. I think that's what it should be doing. I hope that what happens. Okay, so the other thing, also you mentioned the media landscape. In my mind, there were a lot of evidence of how state resources were controlled, away from political parties and all that. But again, just from the media, there's so much media outlet. I think it didn't stop the opposition, from going out and getting their messages across the other. So I don't think this time the control of state media institutionality really plays a significant role. I think with all the social media thing and access that that we have, a lot of opposition political parties were able to get their messages out to people. Except that in areas where they don't have electricity and all kind of thing, maybe they might have been hindered. But I don't see the access to using media in this case as a significant element in this electoral process. But our democracy is developing every year. It's increasing. You also know that the vote counts this time much faster as compared to 7 years ago, and then 11 or 12 or 15 years ago. So I think everything is improving. The more eyes you have watching the process, the less possibility for cheating or fraud will occur. So they should have eyes in all those areas, at all the polling stations where people can collate, all the collation can take place, and people have their individual tally sheets, and they send in the package of the tally sheets to the different stations. They're important. They keep our process going. So we just need to be engaged much more. And hopefully we can elaborate people just like when they're ready to do, they will make a statement. I hope that come November 7th, they can actually make a strong statement and get rid of an incompetent, thuggish, and roguish law. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Real quickly, I think everybody's on the same page in terms of what each party needs to do and not do. Even where we think we have disagreements, it's not much disagreement. For instance, oh, sorry. For instance, what Ben is saying is that anybody needs to do a lot more work in our restaurants, laws, and try to get numbers from LoFi, etc. Which is basically what everybody is saying, including Moses or Sandy. And the same thing Marco is saying. Work on the places you have your votes done. CDC is going to try to make inroads there, which is also so basically we're all on the same page. We are quickly on the issue of the media landscape, as we all know. Even though there's a lot of media institutions in the country that opposition can take advantage of, we also know that a lot of them are private media institutions, and you have to pay to go to them, as opposed to the public institutions such as ELBC and LNTV, where you don't have to pay. And according to the EU Observer Mission, nearly 70% of the time attributed to political contestants and conversations on state-owned broadcaster was dedicated to the CDC. Of all the 46 political parties we had, CDC got 70% of coverage and airtime from ELBC, which is the radio, and LNTV, which is the television. EU observers also said that in terms of campaign finance laws, CDC massively violated campaign finance laws, which is part of our election laws. Abundant use of state resources by the incumbency distorted the level playing field. So basically, I mean, where Unity Party or CPP or ARCOP had to struggle to buy motorbikes and do that, all of government vehicles and buses from the transport authority and everything were at the disposal of the ruling party to transport people. So even we talk about voters being transported, to places to vote, that happened. They put people on NPA buses and took them to places to go and vote for them. Again, is a disadvantage for the opposition who didn't have the state resources, and this is against election laws and state laws, not just election law, but the whole code of conduct and everything. In fact, theft is stealing of government resources when you use government vehicles and government things for personal gain, and that's or political gain, and that's exactly what happened in the EU Observer Mission. Articulated that as well. We want to see what the election commission is going to do, whether they will say something about this before the second round. That's another point. And I'll go back to Michael's point. Why aren't political parties, opposition political parties and candidates and civil society organizations saying something about this? Even taking the election commission to court, taking the government to court and say you are abusing and insulting our resources. Why aren't they doing that?
Because they're all guilty, Apostle, because they're all guilty. All of those political parties don't have any major economic activity to give them income. So they're getting resources from somewhere else too. So they're all guilty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's stop here. There's a lot of material. We will include this material in our next discussion. There's something undue influence, etc. I know the EU Observer Mission made mention of that, whereby um, civil servants were being coerced to go and join ruling party rallies and to vote for ruling party, or else you will lose your job. That's a campaign finance violation. That's also an election law violation in terms of undue influence on an individual to influence their vote. If you don't go to a rally, you don't support us. In fact, they were telling people, giving people t-shirts at the job and say, when you go, take picture. And bring it. Also, we see that you actually attended the rally. One thing I heard is that they also told the people when you go in the ballot booth, in the voting booth to go vote, take a picture. So we see that you actually voted for us and you bring it. All of that is on you influence that needs to be addressed and that played in CDC's favor. Will that not play in CDC's favor again in the second round? I don't know. They might still play the same card. So people just need to be a little more vigilant and do a lot more work. But I think this was a very healthy, very informative conversation. Mr. Foley, we look forward to seeing you back. We meet here every Sunday, 2:30. Please come back as we get closer to the second round and we enjoy your company. Um,
Okay.
yeah, Michael, Counselor, everybody. I mean, we passed the time. So if you guys just want to take a few seconds to close, go ahead and do that.
Sure. Thank you again for a great conversation, guys. I hope at the end of the day, the Liberian people are given the chance to come back and vote, vote the candidate in the one. And I hope the candidate that wins, is someone who's going to change and at least bring some change in Liberia in a positive direction. Uh, and the candidate that I supported in this election that I felt was going to do right, they did not make it into the second round. But I still feel like there's still potential for change in Liberia with the candidates that are there, and I do hope that the message that Liberian will send this round will send that message to those candidates that we want change and we can get something better, and our people can finally benefit from the blessing that our country is. Liberia is a great country, great resources, great motherland. We can't ask for anything better than the land that God has given us. There's nothing better. So our people need to benefit from it. They deserve it.
Yeah, I would just say this. I think we'll mention the last time, and I think I was of the opinion that there's no one candidate can win this in the first round. And I think everybody see the results. Nobody can win this election in the second round. The second round is a dogfight. And if you have the right strategy, if you have the right implementation of the strategy, you're going to get to the finish line. But one thing I would say, Lufa, Lufa, Lufa. If Boakai cannot get 65% of the votes in Lufa, I don't think he can get to the finish line. That's my own opinion. Thank you.
As much as our politics is so tribalized, the important thing is that our people are so poor, they're so desperate, they're so impoverished, and their conditions have influenced some of their actions, and a lot of them politically, and it's an abuse of their rights. Also you name a couple of situations where employees are being forced to do this and forced to do that. Those are all abuse of their rights to make their choice. When you influence people's choices like that, then you actually abuse their civil rights. And that's what CDC have been doing all along. They're using resources, government resources. What kind of economic activity CDC is involved in? For mobile and other people to be riding big cars. I mean, just as a political party leader, what does it work? It doesn't work. These people survive on state resources. It's terrible the way they ruin our economy. And so I think this is the time for Liberian people to take a step back and say, look, what happened to our social economic welfare in the last 6 years? Has it improved? In what way? Is it and take a decision, to make sure you will keep these cronies out. It's a tough time. I am just very, very sorry for the poor Liberian people. There are a lot of us who are Liberians who work in Liberia, work for government and other things, and we have opportunity of getting out and going places and have family here. A bunch of 75, 80% of people don't have those opportunities. So they live in Liberia and they squander, they live in squalor conditions. It's terrible that government can feed off the people like that. Use them. it's a tough thing. I think they should be able to express themselves through their votes. They should turn up and say, look, what happened to the what happened to the expanded Morovia, city of Morovia that we are seeing we're going to build, the Bali Island? What happened to that? What happened to the Iboma loan that they were getting to improve the life? What happened to the, I mean, there's so many failed policies that they can't even explain what a pro policy is about. The government, they just stole it from Liberian people, you know, up to the since 2019. They took over in 2018, up to present. Now one person in the country has been prosecuted for corruption. Now one has been prosecuted. Now one person. How can you have a government like that where people just see at will? You know, it's a terrible thing and it's sorrowful for our country. But at some point, the people have to decide we're going to take a step away and depart from this culture. I think it's about time that they do that. You know, there's a weird people love him, and I think he's disappointed them. So when somebody demonstrates that don't care attitude for you, it's the time to take a step away from him. You know, he had the opportunity to redirect that country into into a positive trend, a good trajectory. He didn't do that. Instead, what he did was to just feed himself, lawfully around the world, use Liberian resources. What the president goes to work off for 30 days using public resources? You go and watch his son. It's even shameful that you're president of the country and your son is paying for another country. And you take the Liberian money and go there and go watch for 30 days. I mean, what should Liberian even be going running behind this man? You know, it has demonstrated. Look at what they do. Also, you have somebody who has been in disgrace. Natalia Magay and what's the Big 12, and this was still turn out in March to vote for these people in the senatorial races. I mean, what is wrong with our people? It's about time that they learn something. You know, but we can only achieve it if we put more resources towards civic education, teaching the people all around the country, not long before elections. You know, because all of these things end up into what you see now in the electoral process. These people need to be taught. Civic education need to come back to the schools because civic duties. We as citizens have civic responsibility to our government and our people. We're not doing that. So there are many issues in that are going to come up after elections. But you know, for this election, I think I would just plead and hope that people can see sense into voting for an alternative to the CDC government. And this is time for everybody to rally around the UP party to make sure that we get Joe Biden elected. It may not be the best, but of the two, I think any day with my eyes closed, I'll go for Joe Biden rather than George Will. You know, so any day it's been a good discussion, like good discussion. Thank you guys for your input and your contributions. I think we should continue to provide. Hopefully, people benefit from the discussion that we're having and it can impact other people. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Real quickly, I think that the opposition candidates, Councillor Tiawan Gonglo, who had the broom trying to sweep corruption and sweep ills out of society. Mr. Benedict Cummings, who was trying to fix the country. Mr. Lucini Kamara, who was the reformer. If they all truly believe what they were saying, if it were not just about themselves becoming president, if it's not me or nobody else, then I think they also need to sit and think about what's good for Liberia and the Liberian people as well. Finally, one thing I wanted to mention here before we go is the issue of international support to Liberia. Liberia is a struggling country, we're a poor country, we have resources, but we need the engagement of the international community to tap into those resources. And really, we rely on aid a whole lot. What I've experienced and what I think could happen going forward is that if you look at what happened in the Unity Party government, there's a lot of goodwill, there's a lot of international investment that came into the country. Once Mr. Weah came in, the first thing that happened was missing 16 billion and then 25 million mop up money. And then the fact that, as Councillor Verdia mentioned, no one has been prosecuted for corruption or anything. And then as the outgoing the former U.S. ambassador said, and Councilor Vrader just mentioned, government officials very close to the president who was sanctioned for corruption and stealing of people's resources were never held accountable. In fact, two of them are now back in the national legislature. That only tells me that the international community will be very hesitant to support us if we have business as usual. So once again, we have to be conscious about that and we have to try to address that. Should those guys even be allowed to take their seats? Civil society organizations and people should start pushing against those things right now. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Look forward to seeing you all next Sunday. As I said, Ben, you're very welcome here. Share your email, and every time we put the show together, we'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Okay.
I don't
Good
have your
night,
phone
guys.
number. I need to
Thank
let
you,
you know.
guys.
All right. Have a good
Okay,
night.
guys. You know.
All right.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll email it to you.
Okay. Yeah, you have the email addresses. There's only Ben whose email we don't have, but he can send it in. All right, guys. Bye bye.
All right.